Call to order this meeting of the Board of Directors of the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District. Could we get the roll call, please?
Yes, Director Sailors.
Present.
Director Gould.
Here.
Director Stark.
Here.
Director Weber.
Here.
Director Wood.
Here.
Director Costa.
Here.
Director Clark.
Here.
Director Rice.
Here.
Director Jones.
Here.
Okay, all are present, and our General Counsel, Mr. John Lawver, is participating remotely this evening.
Thank you very much. Director Rice, would you lead us in the flag? Salute.
Ready? Begin. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on to the Metro Cable announcement. Those interested in watching this can catch the cable cast on DirecTV and Uverse systems and at metro14live.saccounty.gov. Today's meeting will replay at 1:30 on Saturday, March 29th, and again at 6 p.m. on Monday, March 31st on Metro Cable Channel 14. The videos can also be posted or viewed on youtube.com/MetroCable14. Now's the opportunity for public comments, discussion on matters on or not on the agenda. Do we have any public speakers?
I do not have any speaker cards. Those attending online via Zoom, if you'd wish to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand feature.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, moving on, we have a consent agenda. Do we have any comments on the agenda? Do we have any motions on that?
Mr. Chair, I so move consent.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. If we can get the roll, please.
Yes, Director Sailors.
Aye.
Director Gould. Director Stark.
Aye.
Director Clark.
Aye.
Director Rice.
Aye.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Director Weber.
Aye.
Director Costa.
Aye.
President Wood.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to presentation items. We've got a few. We'll start with our first one, Metro Fire Stewardship Report, calendar year 2024. Danielle Burry-Beaton from Intercare, welcome. I apologize if I messed up your name. Okay.
Yes? Oh, there we go. Oh. Good evening to the directors. Appreciate being afforded the opportunity to go over some of your fantastic results for this past year. Because I'm old, I'm going to be looking up there, but maybe at my sheet as well with my glasses. So the first page here is to talk about the next page. I'm sorry, here, let me. There you go. Just to talk about what we do and what this is. So as you know, we are your third-party administrator for workers' compensation. My name is Danielle Burry-Beaton, as Director Wood indicated, and I am your Senior Vice President of Client Services. So I had the luxury of being here several months ago to do the Work Comp 101. We do have Luann Koppel in attendance and Michelle Metters from our organization as well that are here also. So really we're here to talk about your results for 2024, but also going back and looking at a 5-year comparison. So we do this really so that we can kind of see the trends over time and see how we can make improvements or where the successes have been to get us to where we need to go in the future. Always looking for opportunities to improve and looking at the difficult workers' comp system and how we can make any impact for the district. First, I do wanna just make sure you know you had a really great year. So if you hear nothing else this evening, just know that you had a really great year. The program performed very well. That's not just Intercare, that's all the players involved and everyone involved. You know, from your supervisors on up, this has just been a really great year for the program. So we're gonna look at 5 years and I'm gonna go through the report now. Okay. So the first part of this is your key performance indicators. These indicators are for first-year classes. So for each calendar year that you see up there, it's for the claims that we received those years, and I know that includes Intercare and your prior TPA, and what that looks like year over year. So first year cases, anywhere you see a gold star is that it is a better performance than the year before. So an improvement from the year before. So one of the first things we're looking at is your medical onlys, which means they don't lose any time from work. There's no indemnity benefits, 4850, temporary disability. It's really more of those cases that are open for just a few months, they get treatment, and they're back to work. Then you have your indemnity claims, and as you can see, both of those have reduced. The medical only more than the indemnity, but the indemnity are the cases that we spend all of our time talking about, right? Those are the ones that are off work, a little more serious, they're getting treatment, maybe at some point there's some level of permanent disability, maybe there isn't, maybe there's some kind of settlement. So those are the claims that we all spend a lot of time talking about, and those are the ones that are costing the district money along the way. So if you take a look, overall, your reportable claims, we also do sometimes get first aids or information onlys reported to us, so that's why the number above that doesn't add up for those that are doing the math over here, all of my accountants. But your new claims severity is also indicated there. So one area that I think we can improve upon, but I think it will have something to do with the fact that I don't think a lot of cases are coming forward that are medical only, because you can see how down that is, how decreased that is from the year before, is that you have a lot more indemnity cases than you do medical only. So as we go on, that will be a goal, is to try to see if we can turn some of those into medical only as they are reported, so that you have less indemnity as a percentage comparison. We have your average paid per medical only, and we have your average paid there for indemnity. So if you look at a couple things I want to point out on the indemnity section, the days away from work, this was a huge improvement, again, first year cases from the previous year. So the number of days from work in 2024 was 3,164, and you can see how that compares to the prior years. The lower, the better. That means that you have people back to work, you're not backfilling, not ideal to be injured, but the sooner you can get that treatment that you need and get back to work, the better. So that was a huge improvement this year. The other thing is that we have your average paid and your average paid on outliers. So there were two cases, what we consider to be outliers in 2024, and that means that they were paid over $100,000 in the year already on those first year cases. We track that because we notice that those that are paid a higher amount in that first year tend to cost more ongoing year after year. And so the years where you have a higher number of outliers, then that makes sense that we need to be tracking those, because you might have expenses that are going to continue to come up with those claims. This year you had 2, last year you had 4, previous years you either had 0 or 1. The average paid on those outliers is $119,233. So that gives you an idea of looking at your overall paid, which we're going to get to, and then how much of that was just made up for those 2 cases. Obviously, those are more serious cases. The bottom area shows you the payment distribution. So you can see the total paid for first year cases. And this year was almost 7 million. Last year was at just over 4 million. So big difference in first year cases paid. And again, we're tracking first year because we are trying to get apples to apples year over year, so that you can take a look at that. But keep in mind, and we'll talk about this in a moment, some of those numbers are impacted by the COVID years, and that's made it a little difficult to measure year over year, apples to apples, when you consider the COVID period that nobody could have anticipated. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Your payment distribution, where is all your money going? And you can see the outline there of the percentage breakdown between medical, that's all your medical treatment, your surgeries, your evaluations, you have your indemnity, and then you have your legal expense. Legal expense is called legal expense. Others, you may have heard it called allocated expense. These are all the ancillary expenses that don't fall into the medical and the indemnity. So things like defense attorneys, investigations, bill review services, those type of things fall into that category. Another really good thing is you've been pretty consistent with your litigation rate for first-year cases. So given cases that were reported this year, how many of those were litigated? It was 4% in 2024, so a 1 percentage point difference from the year before, and we'll take it. So any improvement is a good improvement. So talking about the COVID, and this is what, to keep in mind when you're looking at a year-over-year comparison. So you can really take a look here at the calendar year, it should say 2022. You had a really significant claim that drove up the costs of that case of that year. So your total paid for that year for just COVID cases is over $1 million. For this year, it was very minor. There were only 4 reported COVID cases, and then you can see the numbers as they pan out over the years prior. So that's why it's a little difficult to try to really get a year-over-year comparison. Most of those were open and shut, and they got their treatment, and they got any disability needed, but you did have some that were more significant and needed more hospitalization or whatnot. Oh, geez, I'm trying to change it with the mouse. Okay, the next page is your litigated cases for first-year cases, claims. So we talked about 185 reported in the period. You had 8 cases that were litigated this first year. You see how the number compares to the prior years. Because you had less cases overall, that makes your percentage just a little bit less than last year. But if you look at the numbers, we're talking about a 5-claim difference of being litigated, which is significant. A litigated case can cost anywhere from 3 to 5 times as much, same injuries, same thing as a non-litigated case. So the more we can just ensure that we're nurturing that communication, that we're doing all the initiatives and the things that we've been trying to accomplish during our ad hoc committee, that we can really work together with HR and trying to make improvements where we can, so that there's that communication piece, which is very, very important. We have the area on the top showing you what Metro Fire looks like compared to OSIP. OSIP is the Office of Self-Insurance Plans. You are self-insured. So this is the state public information. They go by a fiscal year, but it still gives you a comparison of litigation of where you are compared to what all public entities are. And, they're always behind, so we're not gonna have the current year yet, but looking at last year, you're at 5%, they're at 9%. Keep in mind, that's not just fire districts, that's everything. That's all cities, counties, school districts, special districts, transportation, and so you've got a lot of positions that are not as, not critical, but not as, the exposures are different. So obviously, your percentage is excellent, is the bottom line, because you've got a lot of positions there in the public entities that are being monitored. So very good year for you guys. Oh my gosh. Help me, people. Okay, so claims by cause. So the next slides that we're gonna go over are the frequency and severity of the claims received just this year. So we're looking at, and now the watch is going off, and we're looking at year over year. The highlighted are your top 3 for each of those calendar years. Pretty consistent lifting. You had, of course, the pandemic years. This year was also pulling and pushing and strains. Strains and sprains kind of get intermixed. Sometimes it does end up being a sprain, but it produces at first as a strain. So this is how it comes in initially. So these are the drivers by cause of the frequency. Next, we're going to see the cost, so the severity. You can see this one's a little bit more all over the place. You have your strain again, your pushing and pulling, and then this time also your lifting. But when you look at years past, it's a little bit changes over time. Somewhat consistent, but there's some anomalies there. Claims by nature. So this is your frequency by nature. Top yellowish highlighted are your top 3. But we know that cancer and mental health has been such an exerted effort to really try to help minimize those exposures preventative-wise, but also as Intercare and your HR department, trying to manage those cases and do everything we can to get people back to work. So you can see the frequency numbers on there. They weren't in your top, but you can see what those numbers look like year over year. And then your severity, so the cost, the top three are indicated: multiple physical, sprain, strain. Multiple physical could be that an attorney has just put all the body parts on there, or it could be that they fell or something like that, and they've really injured shoulder, knee, back, not just one injury, not just one body part. And then you have cancer and mental health indicated as well in terms of cost. Keep in mind with the cost, that's just the first year cost. So every one of those calendar years is evaluated at the end of December. So you're not looking at a progression of the costs and how much do those cases end up costing. You're looking at an apples to apples, except for COVID, period of time. The cancer tends to be low in the first year, but also a lot of your cancer claims continue treating with their private physicians, and the bills don't always end up with Intercare. And so that's a reason why you're going to see some of the lower medical, some of the lower paid on those cases. Claims by body part, so knee, lower back, and shoulders. Not really any shocking surprises there. And you know, you may be surprised to know that a lot of your cases, I don't know if I could actually say most, but maybe are from training for, training, exercising, doing those kind of things for the conditions that they need to be aware of. That is where most of the cases are coming from. And then your severity by body part is indicated there as well: knee, low back, and shoulders. So not really anything super surprising there. That is what we see with firefighters. Okay, so how does it look like compared to other clients? So this compares to public entity clients that are Intercare clients. Metro Fire's on the far right, and anywhere it's highlighted means you were in the top three in terms of performance in a good way. And then anything that's not highlighted means that you were higher cost and not in the top three for that. So you can see most areas are highlighted for you. The average incurred per indemnity case, that includes the paid and the outstanding budget, which we call reserve, that we expect it's going to cost to take us to the end of the claim. Both of those combined end up being the total incurred. So you can see where that is there. And then your average paids, again, for medical and average incurred for medical. So initially we talked about your key performance indicators, your KPIs for first year cases. This is first year claims. This is everything. This is everything we paid, everything we processed for all claims. So your total paid for 2024 for everything, you can see that number on the top, over $7 million, and where that compares to the year before. It does have a gold star. Of course, we're always looking at ways to decrease that paid, but also ensuring that your members are receiving the benefits and the medical treatment that is so important to get them to where they were before they were injured. You have your payment distribution listed there of where it's coming from. Most of your costs are coming from indemnity. That's your 4850, your temporary disability, and then your lowest percentage is in your legal expense costs. And you can see what that looks like as well year over year is pretty consistent. The best exciting thing today is we started January 1st of 2024 with 485 claims. We opened 194. We closed 285, I think that says. Someone help me with the glasses. 265, thank you, crowd. And we ended the pending with 414 open cases. That means that all those cases that were previously still open and had outstanding liabilities, where OSIP looks at, where your excess insurance looks at, we were able to get a lot of those closed. So 137% closing ratio, We take the new cases plus the reopened cases, and that gives us our total, against the closed cases, gives us our percentage. Our goal is always 100% unless there's some anomaly of like a lot of new cases suddenly that are not just open and closed, but like, you really have an anomaly. So 137%, we are so proud of that, and you guys should be too. And that's, again, not just Intercare, that is everyone. Excellent job, we really appreciate that. Okay, some other successes that I definitely am not gonna be able to read that screen, so hold on one moment. Okay, so just some things that we wanted to highlight for you, that some of them are included in the data, but the types of settlements. So compromise and release, remember that is we're settling it and the case is closed. It no longer has any exposure. And then stipulations mean we pay out their permanent disability and they're entitled to future medical treatment for life. As long as it's for the injury, they're entitled to that future medical treatment for life. And then the take nothing is sort of an anomaly too. That means that it was dismissed at the board. WCAB is a take nothing. That's the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board. That's our court system. That was actually a negotiated thing that happened with a claim that ultimately I think was stipulated, but they agreed to eliminate their other claim. And so that one was dismissed. So take nothings are hard to come by, but it's nice to see that there. Your closing statistics, a case can be litigated and it can be indemnity, it can be litigated and future medical, so just keep that in mind when you're looking at those numbers, but these are some of the cases types of cases that we were able to close over 2024. You've got a lot of claims and client support success. You guys have known I did the Work Comp 101. We've been part of the ad hoc committees, would have been really beneficial, and gaining that relationship with a lot of folks at the district. We've been working with Kaiser, working to help, really we did very minimal, but working to help the HR team put together their booklet of workers' comp and how that works so that it can be available on your apps. And the other things indicated there. We've also implemented, we meet quarterly with the human resources team and then defense attorneys to talk about the claims and kind of roundtable what needs to happen on those. And then some of your ancillary services, these are things like bill review, utilization review, which I know we all love talking about, and then telephonic nurse case management. So you can see that top number, over 4 million, that was the savings by using these services. So again, very good combined savings. Also, if you look at that number under the utilization review, this was the number, the percentage of utilization review approved at the adjuster level. So a request for authorization comes in, the adjuster can review it. We have a lot of protocols we put in place along with Chief House and the Human Resources to be able to authorize those at the adjuster level. An adjuster can't modify or deny treatment, but they can authorize treatment. And so 84% of that, you're probably one of our highest, if not the highest client in terms of percentage that's approved at the adjuster level. So that's really good. And I know we've all been working hard to get to that point because it can delay things if it has to go up to utilization review. And then the final area there is the pharmacy benefit management. So we use Optum. And if you turn to your next page, which I will turn you, we had a situation where a lot of people get their prescriptions filled at Kaiser because that's part of their health insurance as well, and Kaiser will bill us. But Optum was able to work with Kaiser on the job and a retired fire captain and work on mail order prescriptions and change some of the prescription drugs they were receiving. And ultimately, injured worker's happy, he's retired, he doesn't have to leave the house, the prescriptions come, and we're saving about $155,000 a year on just that one claim with those prescriptions. And that's from changing it to mail order, as well as changing the type of prescription and formulary that the doctor was providing. So that was a huge savings. We've got a couple others that we're working on. The nice thing about our pharmacy benefit management program with Optum is we meet with a pharmacist every month and talk about those cases that are kind of high risk, maybe they're on a lot of medications. You know, we understand there's pain and all those other things you need medications, but we also don't want the members of the district to be in harm's way with some of the medications that can cross over and cause issues. So this was a really good success. Goals. What are we doing now? 2025 has already started. These are just some of the things that are important as the program moves forward and trying to not, we don't want to go backwards, right? We want to keep moving forwards and keep making those steps and keep with our initiatives. So we're always looking at whether it's appropriate to settle cases, your future medical cases where they no longer work here, maybe they're retired, maybe they work somewhere else. Is it appropriate to try to settle those? It's really a case-by-case basis. We're always looking at our closing initiatives at 100% goal. But as we know, we were much higher than that this year, which you'll probably hear me say 20 more times. The nurse triage and discussion protocols. So we have some nurse protocols that we've been working on putting in place for the district, which can offer more support. Injured employees benefits. So trying to continue to work with HR for possible innovative solutions to ensure that folks aren't missing out on their 4850 and temporary disability benefits or their full pay as appropriate. And then with human resources, we talked about kind of cleaning up some of the occupations we have listed in our system, kind of narrowing those down, and then identifying hearing claims that might be ready for settlement, ensuring that, you know, they can get their hearing aids as they need to ongoing, but seeing if it's appropriate to settle those cases. And then we're looking at statistical coding on older years. The data came over from your prior TPA, that data came into our system, but now that we've kind of gotten through a lot of things, we can maybe look at some of that and fix some things that are, for instance, coded not otherwise available or not otherwise a code. And so things like that, which really does help with when we're trying to do things like this and look at a year-over-year comparison. A lot of those are closed, but we have commitment with HR, and we're going to work on trying to do some of those, so we're excited about that. Otherwise, again, if you hear nothing else, you guys had a really great year. I couldn't be more excited for the future with you all, and I honestly couldn't be more proud of our team, proud of HR, proud of everyone that has worked with us to get us to where we are now, and appreciative of the directors as we've been working on the ad hoc and other initiatives. So I thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. Let me know.
Thank you so much. Do we have questions? I'm sure we do have comments and questions, so I'll start down here. Comments, questions, anyone?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Director Jones?
All right, thank you. Back on, I think it was page 5 of your slide, or page 59 on our agenda, there was a slide about litigation rate comparisons.
Yes.
Now, that's a percentage. How does that translate with dollars?
Well, we know that a litigated case costs 3 to 5 times more than a non-litigated case, and we have your average indemnity claim and what that costs in the data here. I'd have to get that for you offhand without just saying it's probably 5% more than what the average indemnity case is, which I think was somewhere around 6,000 to 7,000.
Okay. Well, no, I was just curious because it showed percentage.
Right.
But I don't know if comparatively with all these other agencies, how do we assess out the actual dollar cost? And
Yeah.
yes, I understand that's a chunk of information for right now.
Yeah.
So later is fine.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we don't get that data statewide in terms of the litigation cost, not from the Office of Self-Insurance Plans. A lot of times on first-year claims, and keep in mind this page is looking at first-year claims and how many were litigated in that percentage. A lot of times that litigation cost or the cost of the claim isn't always in year one. It tends to hit as time goes on, depending on the case and depending on what is being alleged. So those settle usually around year 2, 3, 4, depending on the body parts and the things involved. So that's where you start to really see those costs ramp up. But I'll see what I can find for you.
Okay, no, again, I was just curious under, let's say that first one, calendar year 2020, there's 3% and 6% and then a 7%. But what happens if that 3% cost us 10 million and the 6% for the OSIP cost $1 million? The percentage is there, right?
Right, right. What does
Okay,
that
you got
cost
it.
equate to?
You got
Yes,
it.
I got it. Yeah, absolutely.
And then,
Absolutely.
if I may, a very particular in the weeds again, if the answer is better, if you get back to us, that's
Yeah.
fine. How did we save, I think it was $18,000 by changing prescriptions to mailing?
Yeah, that was just one claim.
Exactly.
That was one
What
claim.
was, well, perhaps this is a can of worms, but how is it that just dealing one claim, one prescription, that's a chunk of change?
So it's all about the pharmacy benefit management program and the formularies that are in place, whether you're using also generic versus name brand, and how the doctor prescribes the prescription. So compounded, if this treating physician had the prescription to be compounded, that is a lot more expensive, very expensive compared to other options available. Usually what Optum does is we want to try the other options first. If it has to end up being compounded, then that's okay, but it costs more 99% of the time. And so looking at other options. So Optum was able to work with the primary treating physician and the injured employee and our staff at Intercare, and Human Resources, I think, was also involved in trying to see what kind of options they could have to be able to make this a better solution for the injured worker, as well as a cost savings for the district. So we've got some other targets, so I think next year we're going to be talking about a few success stories as well. It's not for every case, depends on what the treatment is, depends on what the medication is, but this was a nice success.
Thank you.
Director Rice.
Thank you. Great report, and I really appreciate it. Mine are actually pretty simple. I was curious on page 12, we have the other client comparisons. Are those other fire departments of similar size or similar risk model to Metro Fire? I don't need to know who they are, but
Yeah.
if that's the case, that's fine.
They are other public entities, mostly cities,
Okay.
that have the exposure at least with fire and police, but they don't just include fire.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's in the public safety realm?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The next one, this might be a little bit more complicated because I need it for my understanding. On page 13, when we talked about indemnity, can you explain to me what the meaning of indemnity is, and that may help me with my question?
Okay, so in this sense, indemnity is talking about the type of benefit. So when we pay things, they come out of a reserve bucket. So we have medical, you have overall indemnity, which could be permanent disability, temporary disability, 4850. We also have to capture the difference between temporary disability and the full 4850, which aren't real dollars, but we have to capture it as dollars because OSIP requires us to do that, but isn't truly part of the actual funding that happens behind the scenes. So that is what makes up that indemnity. When we talk about indemnity claims, we mean claims that have lost time from work, so it would fit into that benefit. Claims that might be delayed or denied, those could be indemnity cases, even though maybe we haven't paid yet, but we will. Anything like that is an indemnity claim. But on that page specifically, it's talking about the payments that go into the indemnity.
I'm in the right spot.
Yeah.
So my question would be, would it be possible for you to show lost time and how we've reduced lost time by streamlining our process and being more responsive? And if it's in there and I missed it, enlighten me. But if it's not, that one would be super important. It's not only a morale builder, but it's responsible.
Absolutely. It is in here. Let me try to find it. And very good point. And luckily, when we met with Human Resources, the report we went over is more like 45 pages, and we wanted to save you that. But it is in here. Let me find it really quickly. I think it's towards the beginning. On your first page, second page of my report, looking down at the bottom where it says after indemnity claims reported in the middle there, so it's key performance indicators, it says days away from work. So those days away from work are how we're paying those benefits. It's based on them being away from work. So you can see that significant reduction in 2024. So huge. Whatever everyone's doing is making a big difference.
And here I thought I was following it really good. Thank you. And then my last one, I love the part on the pharmaceutical awareness and savings.
Yeah.
We can pay astronomical sums on pharmaceuticals, and it's horrible. So I really love the fact that detail, you guys are that detail oriented. The last one was on the ancillary services, the on-staff nurse, and the calls that go in. Do we have a sense that the members are very satisfied with this service? It's working for us. We're seeing it grow because it's successful, or are we just kind of holding ground?
I think for the nurse case managers, we've started ramping up the utilization of nurse case managers just in the past few months based on discussions in the ad hoc committee about trying to help the nurses can help, and that also bridges some communication and some of those things. Also with medical providers, when you have a medical professional with a medical professional, that helps as well. So it's too early to say from the ramp up how that's going to go. We have overall mostly had very great success in terms of feedback that we've received. Not perfect, and it'll always be a work in progress, but mostly very, very happy success with that.
That extra relationship and establishing that and have somebody that speaks the language on the other side, I'm really glad to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to my left? No. To my right? Questions? Director Gould?
Well, I don't have questions. I just want to say congratulations for all the hard work that the ad hoc committee is doing. And I can remember fondly a January meeting where we all sat around and were curious of how this would work out. And I think it's because of all the hard work of the members of that committee that have proven to really set, I think, a new standard in California. Correct me, Brian, if I'm wrong, but I think this might be a new standard for public safety entities who look at how to manage these costs. And I'm seeing six-figure numbers, and I couldn't be happier, frankly. So that's it. Good work, all of you.
Thank you, Director.
Any other comments, questions? No. Thank you so much. Oh, Director Weber.
No, I've said this from day one. I love your team. I love our own team, Chief House, 522, HR, the ad hoc. You've done phenomenal work in this short year. But I thank you mostly for putting up with an old man in a closed room, having these ideas and having no idea how to get there. But I know that we wanted to get there, and all of you folks made that happen. So I appreciate that. It is very good for our members. It's good for the district, but it's very good for our members. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Any other comments, questions? Great. Thanks so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your meeting.
All right, moving on. Next up is 2024 EMS review. I have here that it's the EMS division. Chief Rodnicki, welcome. Chief Kiley.
Good evening.
Or PowerPoints.
President Wood, board members, Chief House, colleagues. Tonight, we're going to talk about EMS and not only myself, but your EMS chief, Chief Keeley, Battalion Chief Scott Perryman, and CQI Manager Adam Blitz are here. And we're going to tag team this presentation. And the first page is a little misleading. It's not just a reflection on 2024, but it's also an opportunity to discuss what's coming in 2025. Forgive me, I didn't even introduce myself. I'm John Rodnicki, C-Shift Commander, so it's my pleasure to be here. This presentation was in the making, and as you know, Chief Keeley's taken over the EMS division, and we had some reports being generated in the background over the last couple of months, a highlight particular of MIH, and then an annual report that we deliver to the LEMSA every year. So we wanted to combine all those, and we delayed this presentation until we had all the parts and pieces for you. So last year in 2024, we really looked at what your priorities are as the board of directors. And it was great because we can look at all the reference material that you've put together and really look at the 5 key strategies and the initiatives that you have, and then take that down to Chief House and the direction and his goals and what he's given us. So as an EMS division, we looked at those and decided, what are we going to focus on? With the great EMS team we have, I literally could stand here and talk for a couple of hours about all that, and I'll spare you. But for me to stand and talk for a couple hours says a lot, because I'm usually short-winded. But tonight, what I want to do is focus on 2 of those. Of your 5 key strategies, the ones that really stood out to us in the division were service delivery and culture. And we really felt like that's where we can really make a big positive change and put a lot of our energy and effort. So in your service delivery strategies, you had some initiatives about best practices, administrative coordination, sustainability, and accreditation. And when we talk about culture, it's really about how do we view EMS and how do we address it in our agency and also in the region, since we do work with the other 3 fire agencies along with our private partners. So I'm actually going to change the order of this. I think it's best that we start with culture. So with the culture, the things we focused on were a lot of what comes out of CQI. The feedback and the support that we give our members, how we approach them to remove any fear of them calling the division, asking for help, asking for clarification. And that's a lot of the work that Adam Blitz did and what he's going to cover for you tonight. But another part of the culture is we run hundreds of calls a day, and we do great work every single day, but we wanted to put more effort into highlighting our members. So as you've probably seen in social media and you've maybe witnessed in person, is the challenge coins for EMS excellence. And that's really focused on those calls that our members go above and beyond. And it's not just measured based on patient outcome, but really about the initiative and the excellent service provided. And so last year in 2024, the EMS division took the lead, and with along the support with the executive team and everybody who can make it, we went in the field and recognized and delivered 24 challenge coins to our members. And so that's a big increase from what we weren't doing before. We recognize members in different ways, but this was just a new way to get out there and show our appreciation. In addition to that, we recognize the importance of being in the station and having FaceTime. And so with prioritizing the culture, we were able to do much more station visits, in-person training, feedback from the calls that our members went on. Sometimes that needed a little more redirection, a little more education, or just highlighting the great work they did. Most of the times in EMS, we don't get feedback from the hospitals on how the patient did and what their outcome was. But we really went above and beyond to track down the results of that patient, to really let our members know what the output was and all the work they did and how that really resulted in that patient care and outcome. So there's a couple examples of the culture that we really try to influence, along with many other things such as our FTO support, our internships, our EMTs going to paramedic school. Captain Jim Ellis in the EMS division worked tirelessly with many of the schools, not just in our region, but Northern California, to find ways to provide internships, primarily for our members. But there's a lot of back-end work that goes into supporting that end of it. And so anything we could do to improve the culture and the view of EMS and the service that we provide, we did. So the result of that is increased service delivery. And so we had a lot of wins and successes. Primarily, the APOC crisis was one of them that we saw a reduction in time. And that came through that team effort, the regional effort amongst the fire service and our private partners, along with the county leadership and support, where we bridged and built relationships with those folks at our LEMSA in the county and worked with them as well. And this is not just a win for EMS, it really is an agency effort. The relationships from our fire chief, Chief House, to the executive team, it really took a lot of us to engage and focus on how we're going to solve this APOC crisis. It did get better, and we went through the winter, and it came up a little bit, but I know Chief Keeley still communicates with the hospitals regularly, and they're working through an increased census and a lot of patients, but they're doing everything they can to support us with APOT. So there'll be a little bit of up and downs regarding volume. The other part of service delivery was alternative models. Many of you heard about those models we tried, especially trying to solve when we're in drawdown, so when we don't have many ambulances in the system. So everything from consolidating BLS ambulances, increasing ambulances in the system, bringing in surge ambulances. So many initiatives we did. Telemedicine was another one we tried. So very proud of EMS and Metro Fire leading the way and being innovative in how we tried to find the best solutions to support our members and provide that level of service. So with that said, and those focuses, again, taking direction from you, the board, and Fire Chief House, I'm now going to kick it over to Adam Blitz, who's going to talk a little bit about our QIP and what that is, and then Chief Perryman will talk about MIH, and Chief Keeley will round it out for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Ronicky. Good evening. President Wood, Board of Directors, Chief House. I'm here to talk about the QIP. I'm just going to share a few slides with you. It's a 62-page document. And for the people maybe watching or people that aren't familiar, a QIP is a quality improvement plan. And what that basically is it's like a manual or a Wikipedia of what Metro EMS is. So we're talking about everything from, it's governed by the board, it's controlled by the chief or managed by the chief, and all the way down to our fleets and our dispersion and where things are, our auditing, the equipment we use, the cots, the ambulances. So it's a vast, vast document. But I wanted to just highlight a few things for you from that document. And I couldn't have put this together I didn't put this together myself. I had a lot of help. I had help from the day captains in EMS. I had help from GIS Jake with the mapping, the addition of the squads, and the addition of the MIH unit, 50s. There was a lot of help, besides just me. This slide talks to the academy training. And with the academy training, there's a picture of 24-1's academy. And then a picture on the right there is an innovation they made last year. They switched for this academy 24-1 from a tabletop MCI type format to an actual live MCI. So what they did was they had the shift commander there. They had truck 23 roll into Zinfandel code 3 with CERT team victims and mashed up cars, and they were actually using the spreaders. So, to me, that speaks. I'm going to talk about what it is and how it speaks to the priorities of the board and the priorities of the fire chief. For that, it speaks to the members and culture, from changing it from a table, which is limited and not real life, to way more real life with the actual firefighters you're going to have coming and extricating people next to you. So they won't have it on a real life call the first time they're working with truck 23. Service delivery, again, real life, and external engagement, because we also involved UC Davis as the control facility, and their base coordinator didn't tell his staff that it was a drill. So that was nice, and it was illuminating on both sides. The hot wash afterwards, we both learned a lot. There's a picture up there, you can see the command post. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is the iView laryngoscope. The iView laryngoscope, what we were faced with at the last fall, we learned that our King Vision laryngoscope, which we use for video laryngoscope, we still have the old manual stuff we all used, but there's the video laryngoscope, and that product, the King Vision, went sunsetted. They lost materials that they could never get again, and they closed it up. And we used all our blades up in October and November, and we had nothing. So we enlisted the EMS team to look at different, 3 or 4 different replacements. Plus, we were in the middle of a budget year. That King Vision that when expired was over a $35,000 purchase. We didn't have that. So we were like, what can we do? And we learned about the IV laryngoscope. It's a all-in-one disposable laryngoscope. They use it once and throw it in the trash can. It's got a Mac blade instead of the old King Vision blade, had a channel that was difficult and actually made it harder sometimes to intubate. This device can be used, it has no channel. They can intubate with a Mac blade like they learn in paramedic school. And they can go back and forth. If they like the screen or not, they can use their own eyes. So it's that. It's easier to use. And it's also, as a DICO, I'm glad they don't have to clean it. They can just throw it away. The way that speaks to it is obviously member health and wellness, being disposable, service delivery, it increases success rates. California core measures have added first pass success rates of intubating from now on to what they're focusing on. So we're gonna have to report on it. Let's have our numbers be good. And also the financial management, that's $90 a device. Our other thing I told you was over $35,000 plus replacement blades. We do about 8 to 10 intubations a month. So we're talking, 10,000 versus 35,000. So that's good there. Another thing we started doing was sharing data more with the crews. So this is just one example. This I put up every month on the Image Trend, which is their EPCR platform, their tablet. When they log in, the dashboard now will show them last month's statistics. So this gives our crews a better idea. When I was out in the field, I never had any idea, are there just as many hangings and shootings and heart attacks and, strokes? I didn't know what those levels were. So now our crews can actually see that, they transport 40% of their CPRs. That's amazing. They're viable enough to be transported. That's fantastic. They're doing great work. We're doing, EJs. We can watch how many people we're placing in the waiting room. They can see how they compare to their peers. That's just one part of data and auditing and CQI. We're required to, with our call volume, which is about 7,000 calls a month, we're required to audit 1% to 3% by the regulators. In 2023, we pulled off 1.3%. It went up to 2.4% in 2024. So we've been increasing that, getting close to that 3% goal. I don't want to lag, so I'll just keep going. Another thing we started doing was when we do analyze, we try to look at 100% of our CPRs and we give feedback on those CPRs, and we use the CQI module to do that. Each, out of our CQI team, there's a team member has battalion 9, battalion 14, battalion 13 for those cardiac arrests. Well, one of the things we've been doing this past year was also accessing CPR report cards. There's one displayed in front of you right now. That was for Medic 41 last year. And one of the great things about it, if you look at it, it talks about compression fraction on that dial on the left, which the goal is 80% for American Heart. They were at 90%. You look at the chest compression rate, they're right there at the bottom of the green, but that's because the Lucas was set at 102. Very consistent. You can see that the amount of times they had hands off the chest over 10 seconds was 0. The longest pause they had was 9 seconds, and that was probably putting on the Lucas. Okay? So this speaks to service delivery, how they're doing. It speaks to culture. It speaks to the financial management of getting the most out of CodeStat, which is the platform I look at how, if I want to see the rhythms and the EKGs from any code, that's how I was accessing it. Now we're actually using the CPR report cards much more and efficiently. The last slide I have for my part is talking about the APOT Summit. Last year, Sac County held the very first APOT Summit at the beginning of the year. Chief Rudnicki gave the most impactful speech at that presentation. And the reason we know it was impactful was because within weeks, we went from being the worst or second worst in the state of California for the last 10 years to all of a sudden we're second, I think, in the state for best now. Or at least we were before the little dip he spoke of in December. So That was a very impactful thing. The way he opened it up was talking about, that's a phoropter, that picture of what an eye doctor uses, and he wanted to just share. The room was filled with C-suite from the hospital people, and lots of different players were in that room, stakeholders. And he basically spoke to how everybody sees this problem differently and how we can align our vision of this. What was even more impactful was when he started talking about the need for the next available unit, for that next available patient. And when we're tied to the wall, we can't respond to that person. All of a sudden, somebody's coming from the city or somewhere else. It could be detrimental. The two pictures inside that phoropter, that is a very young mom on the left who dropped into cardiac arrest and was resuscitated, and we presented coins and awards for that, and she is completely intact and doing well. And the little guy on the right there, or their left, our right, is a little 2-year-old who was hit in the head by his uncle's knee by accident turning a corner and was unresponsive, CPR in the woods for 6 months, and then came out of it and is perfect now. And there's great video of our PIOs at the station and the little guy running around, and it was just a wonderful experience. And I just want to emphasize how impactful Chief Rudnicki's presentation was to that. And I mean, that doesn't just help Metro, that doesn't even just help Sacramento. That's helped the whole state. People are calling, how did you guys fix this? One of the things that happened right after that meeting from his talking was the development of Kaiser Roseville's intake and Mercy San Juan's APOT Alley. And they started sharing that with the other hospitals. And that's why getting everybody on the same page was so important. So those are just some of the highlights from 2024 and our QIP. Thank you. Any questions for me before I leave? Okay.
Thank you.
You just heard some great things that Metro has been doing over the last year, and so we might as well just keep going on with that theme of what have we done. And so, talking a little bit about mobile integrated health, I want to get right into it. Let's go right for the stats. So, we recently celebrated our 3rd year of operation for mobile integrated health, and this is what you see in that bottom left-hand corner. That graph shows some tremendous growth, and I'm really happy about that. 940 incidences. But I also want to call out on that bottom right where it says additional contact details. A huge special thank you to Candace McGowan, because she is the one that figured out how to capture this. Because yeah, we have 940 instances, but there's all this stuff we're doing behind the scenes. And so these are the things that we're doing behind the scenes that we can now show our healthcare providers and the health system of, look, we had 538 phone calls to doctors, case management, family members, patients, 538 of those calls, in addition to the 940 calls that we had. You may also notice, you're like, visits, 239 visits. How does that equate, the difference between a visit versus an incident? An incident is going to be much more significant, where we're going to be writing a prescription, where we're going to be doing something significant. Visit is something like, let's follow up with that patient. Did they get their medication? Oh, I'm glad they got their medication. Did you talk to your doctor? Did you actually follow up and get a doctor's appointment? So that was the difference between a visit and an incident. Those additional details, now that we have that, it really gives a more complete picture of what we're doing behind the scenes, and that is what is making the program so successful. But this 3rd year, how does it really compare looking at what we've done in the past? So this is what we've previously done to give you some perspective. So the very first year, that was our baby year. We were just starting out. We were cute, we were bubbly, we were trying to figure things out. And so, but we had some really good growth opportunities, because in that year 2 phase, we really started putting our foot on the gas and figuring it out. That year 2, we went from 193 calls to that 486 calls. That's 152% growth from year 1 to year 2. And then, well, we might as well keep going, because on that 3rd year, 940 calls, that's a 94% difference over that 2nd year. So you can see that we're trending up in a nice direction. What I also like about this is when you start looking at some of the other facts, that year 2, we had 253 911 calls that MIH went on. Look at the difference on that third year. On that second year, 60% of the time, MIH was able to fix it right there on scene. On that third year, 74% of the time, we were able to fix it and address it right there on scene without that individual going into the emergency room. Huge savings, a huge savings. Something that's a little near and dear to my heart is that bottom line there, the behavioral health patients diverted from the emergency room. That second year was 33 patients, and now let's look at that third year, 96 patients. I want to put a little perspective on that. So the average patient, mental health patient that goes into the emergency room spends 30 hours before they get definitive care. So to do a little bit of quick math, you go, okay, so 96 hours or 96 patients times 30 hours, that's 2,880 hours that was saved of emergency room bed capacity. If the average firefighter spends 2,900 hours in a work year, we saved a lot of time. So just huge, huge wins. We got the patient to the right place the first time, and we were able to triage. Do they go to a psychiatric hospital? Do they go to psychiatric urgent care? Or maybe just a respite center, or maybe even just some resources? That was a huge win for me. I was really, really happy about that. All these amazing stats that I can talk about all night on, they're the result of the team. We had 7 advanced providers, nurse practitioners, and physician assistants, and we've grown the team up to 14. We started that third year with 5 shifts a week. We're now up to 12 shifts a week. So it's only going to get better. All of these stats, what does it equate to? Well, it equates to $3.9 million in savings in the healthcare system. That is a lot of money. And so you look at stats, you look at money, that's all important. But I want to tell you about what the most important thing is. This is the most important thing. It's the patients. It's the patients. It's the stories behind it of the care that they received, of where they were able to have better care delivered, or more appropriate care delivered, or more complete package of care, so that they just get the best care possible. And think of the crews. The real reason also is the crews. They feel like they're able to deliver better care as well, that they're not going on the same repeat patient over and over and over with no other additional resources. So you also heard Chief Wernicke talk about earlier that you have your priorities, the chief has his priorities, and it all trickles down. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take the priorities that have been given to us and put on your MIH glasses, and so you can have that vision. So the first one is service delivery. What has MIH done to enhance that service delivery? The second one is external engagement. Through those lenses of MIH, what has MIH done to enhance those external engagement possibilities? Like with our law enforcement, where we're now doing jail clearance, or we're now helping with case management with Kaiser and some of the other facilities so that we can get the patient the right care and where they need to be. Think of the member health and wellness. We may have had an individual, hypothetically, get hurt on a fire, and instead of going into the emergency room to get stitches and sit there for hours and hours and hours, maybe our MIH team was able to go there, do the sutures, and give them all the work comp paperwork so they could follow where they need to go, but they were able to stay at work and have all the care done by our own Metro Fire members. There's so many applicable things where we're able to help out our own members as well. I think of the culture. What culture is Metro Fire setting the stage for not just in our area, but throughout the rest of the region by this service that we're doing? And then also think of the culture that we may be helping out for our own internal members who may be looking at different career paths in our own organization with this. The last one is the additional revenue services. Stay tuned for year 4. And with that, I'll have you keep on your glasses, but we'll just take off the MIH lenses, but we'll have you keep your glasses on to focus on our 2025 goals. And so Chief Keeley's going to tell you about those 2025 goals.
What an intro. Chief Keeley, Director of EMS, and as the newest member of the EMS division, I'm able to finish this out. So, looking forward into 2025, what are some of the things that we're focusing on? We have a ton of stuff going on in the EMS division, but these are just some of the highlights. I'm going to take it a little bit out of order. One of the first things that we're focused on is bringing back tabletop training to the firehouse. In coordination with the training division, we have brought that ability for firefighters and crews to sit around the table and share experiences. One of the side effects of COVID was it drove us into our rooms and onto our computer screens. So we ended up with a lot of Vector Solutions assignments, especially when it came to EMS. That took away that ability for the crew to share the vast amount of experience each member has. And so bringing back tabletop training allows our oldest members to our youngest members to share experiences that are similar, and it just deepens the well of that knowledge that is able to be shared across the table. The next one is something called TAD. It stands for Transport to Alternate Destinations. This is a new program that's coming to Sacramento, and it's going to allow our ambulances to transport to something other than an emergency department for mental health, behavioral health emergencies. So what does that mean for the APOT? What does that mean for our members to not be standing on the wall? What does that mean ultimately for that patient? Because the behavioral health emergency patient is not going to get the definitive care that they need when they're sitting in the emergency room. Oftentimes they spend days, 4 days, 5, 6 days in the emergency department trying to get their medications balanced. And they're unable to have any privacy. They are on a cot in the hallway oftentimes. They're fed basically turkey sandwiches for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that exacerbates their problem. So TAD is going to be able to provide, it's going to be an avenue for our members to be able to provide better destination for these types of patients. It's also going to open up beds in the emergency departments, which will help the overall APOT issue. There's 2 current TAD receiving facilities, one in South Sacramento, one downtown near Sutter, or near UC Davis, and then there's also a sobering center that's run by WellSpace that's going to be down near the jail. The next one is responses to behavioral health calls without law enforcement. This is a huge impact to our members, both operationally and to their safety. So working with the LIMSA, it is a top priority for the EMS division to provide continued support and guidance to protect our members in these situations. And up until recently, if our members made patient contact and then left the scene, there was a potential problem with their paramedic licensure when it comes to abandonment. Recently, according to a document 8062, which is a protocol with Sacramento County, there was a memo that was released that augmented that protocol that provides a set of checklist for our members to follow, and it is up to the captain's discretion on whether that scene is too dangerous to continue to engage with that patient, and if law enforcement is not responding, we have the ability to withdraw from that scene. And our paramedics' licenses are going to be safe. So that was a huge win for our members' safety, for Metro Fire, but ultimately for those paramedics that are worried about the future of their ability to continue working as a paramedic. And there's a lot more that needs to be done on this, so stay tuned for that. Finally, this is a really awesome thing. There's a Survivors Social coming up on May 20th, 2025. Everybody should be receiving an invitation to that. That is to celebrate the continuum of care from bystanders to EMS providers through the definitive care providers at the emergency department in the hospitals. Currently, we have 4 people that were in a critical state, either unconscious, CPR, or otherwise, that their lives that were saved will be celebrated, and they'll be able to tell their stories, meet their caregivers, and just experience what it was like at that scene and throughout their recovery at the hospital. We're going to have ice cream that's donated by one of our very own engineers, Blake Carlisle. He owns Handel's Homemade Ice Cream, so that's going to be a really special event, and it's going to be right here at headquarters, so look for an invitation coming up. Ultimately, we continue to strive to be better than we were the day before. Metro Fire is continuing to be innovative and adaptive in our in our delivery of care on scene to patients, and very proactive in looking at the latest ways to augment Metro Fire's service delivery, as you just witnessed through the presentations that were given earlier. So ultimately, we're always focused on that reason that Chief Perryman talked about, that patient and our members. So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer. Otherwise, thank you for the time.
Chief, thank you so much for your time. Before I turn it over to my directors, I just want to make a comment. I appreciate all the details in the story that Chief Perryman told. And one of the big benefits of getting to his points, getting to his success, was work that was done years ago. We went back to cap in 16 and 17. And it's the relationships that he worked on and others that built the ability to get to those success stories that he talked about. It's just very timely, given that there will be several of us going again this year in the next month and a half for cap to cap. So just for the public out there, for those who pay attention, why do we go to cap? Why do we participate in it? And it's the successes that Chief Perryman highlighted are the reasons why we go. So thank you so much for doing that. Any comments or questions, Director Rice?
Chief Keeley,
Yes,
how are you?
Okay.
This issue isn't developed by Metro Fire, and the Sacramento County Sheriff, Jim Cooper, copped out on us. And with the Sheriff's Department not responding to these incidents because of liability issues that they could get sued for, explain to me how you're going to explain to this board why, let's just say, Battalion Chief Perryman was shot and killed on an incident that the sheriff wouldn't respond to, but we responded to. What are you going to tell me that's going to make sense? And where I'm going, if the sheriff's not going, we shouldn't be going. Our members are not trained for this. We had training on active shooter incidents, and we integrated with, and we worked very hard to do that. This is upside down, it's backwards, and we are putting these members in an incredibly dangerous situation every day. I've been the president of California Professional Firefighters. 2 weeks after I took the job, Captain Dave Rosa from Long Beach Fire was shot and killed on a fire by a distressed person. Max Fortuna, Stockton Fire, shot and killed on a fire by a person defending his property. Our own Engine 53 had a gun fired through a door that went right between them. We should not be going, and we shouldn't be talking about this here and thinking up solutions. We need to draw on the line in the sand and say, if it's not safe for the sheriff, it's not safe for us, and that's their job. We take the liability every day, but I'll tell you what, I don't want to sit in front of Channel 3 or anybody else and have to explain why we were on this scene and 2 of our members were shot and killed when the sheriff wouldn't even respond. So I'm not asking you for an answer, but this is messed up and it has to be fixed immediately. And if you asked me, my direction, it's not my job. I know that. I know what my job is. We would not be going to those incidents, period. So it's more of a comment than a question, but you're ultimately going to be the one in the hot seat that's going to do that knock on the door and have to explain to that family and that wife why her husband, or that husband why his wife was shot and killed on an incident that we probably didn't have any business being on. That's going to be on you.
I agree with you, and I appreciate the perspective, and that question has been asked. So
What are we doing?
We have been very reactive because this was dropped on us by the sheriffs. So we're doing the best that we can to protect our members' licenses, but ultimately to protect their lives and their safety. There is something built into that memo that's attached to the protocol that if there's any weapons reported on scene, our members don't need to leave the firehouse. So at least there's a component that allows us to never go to the scene when weapons are involved, and I can see us expanding on that.
We shouldn't even be placing our members, that dispatch should never come to the fire station. Our members should not have to make that decision when the agency that's responsible for it is shirking their responsibility publicly. And I'm not getting on you, Kylie, you know that, but This really bugs me, and it's bugged me since we first started talking about it. I've known Sheriff Cooper for many, many years. I don't understand it. Our working relationship has been second to none. We have always taken care of each other, and we have always taken care of the mentally ill together in a really cohesive fashion. And this is so out of character for that department. It's out of character for the sheriff that I know. But I can't sit here in good conscience. Our members, they shouldn't be dispatched to these. What are you gonna do? This was me on Panama. Mike Hogan got out of Engine 9, and I didn't feel right, and he got out and he said, Cap, we shouldn't be here. We left. The sheriff came and they arrested a bunch of homeless guys that were burning wire, and they racked around into a Mini 14. That's what we were walking on. And you know why we didn't go? Because the hair on the back of our neck stood up. You know, there's so much more going on here. I'm gonna go into body cams next. And if we're using body cams for discipline, we're gonna have a real problem.
If I can speak to just one more thing to accentuate what you're talking about. I went to the Joint Defense Council meeting earlier this month, and one of the outputs, the attorney that was attending asked us what some of the outputs should be from that meeting. And the only thing that I said is, the main output is to protect the members, our members that are arriving on scene without law enforcement, and we need to divert as many calls as we can out of the 911 system to 988. And so they were given that primary directive by me at that meeting. So we're working on it, Director.
I appreciate it, and I'm not at you on this, but I lose sleep on this. It's going to happen. It's happened in other fire departments in this state. It's a matter of time.
Predictable is preventable.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Director Costa.
Yeah, thank you. And to follow up on Director Rice, I had an opportunity to go to a firehouse recently, and they did bring this up as a major issue. So it's good to hear the director providing feedback. And so it's important that we are looking into it and we're informing the men and women out there of their rights. So then my follow-up question, though, is like, what do you need from the board? How can we help you?
I would say that's to be determined. We'll probably work with operations and be able to provide the direction that we're recommending that we go. But there's a lot to be answered right now. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, it's an extremely sensitive topic. I stepped forward because Chief Keeley and I are working on this, representing operations. And we definitely feel the weight of this, and it doesn't make it better, but I think for context, it might also help that once again, leading the region, we are hosting meetings with sheriff. And one of the biggest problems we have going to these calls, to Director Rice's point, is we shouldn't be going if we know it's dangerous or there's a risk to our members. The problem at times is the information we're getting from dispatch accurate? Ideally, we don't even go, to your point, 100% accurate. So we're trying to navigate right now with the county and sheriff, getting the calls to 988, and then they don't come to us. But when they do, are we getting accurate information? That's a big problem. And then so the next piece to that, an output of a recent meeting last week, was getting the two dispatch centers, fire and law, together to work on that communication piece to make sure we're getting all the intel we can. So there's many things law can't share with us, but for example, if they knew of a violent house or they had responded 10 times in the previous day, whatever intel and SA we can get, we're seeking that information to inform our captains with more information. Also, if they do get dispatched, we do not have the expectation that they go to the scene. We're asking that they get in their rig and gain as much situational awareness as they can. If they're parked 5 blocks away as appropriate, we're in support of that. As we slow everything down and really try to figure out, but with support of the LEMSA, our objective is to put some extra effort into gaining as much situational awareness as we can to determine if it's safe. And I'll just give you one brief example. A couple weeks ago, I was working a shift commander. I heard one of these calls come in. Their crew staged appropriately. They didn't have enough information. But the information through dispatch was very brief because, again, they just dispatch the brief sentence or two conversation they have and they punch out the crews as they're gaining more intel. Long story short, this was a patient in mental health crisis who had no weapons, had family members on scene who had called for help. They were out front of the house waiting for a response. And if all we looked at was a dispatch, it seemed like it was way too dangerous. We personally took the initiative to call the reporting party, excuse me, who was the sister on scene saying, nope, my brother's here, he needs help, no weapons, he's safe, I'm safe, we're all safe. And the question was, well, do you want to go to the hospital? Do you need help? Yes, we do. So there's opportunities for us to identify the risk and really identify what is truly going on. And if there's any hairs on the back of our neck standing up, we're not going. But we also don't want to miss the opportunity where we're reducing our service just because of miscommunication. So
Right.
for our men and women, it doesn't make people feel better, but we're really trying to navigate everything we can do to make it better and safer, but we are in a unfortunate circumstance, so thank you.
Chief, before I go down, I just have a question on what you just said. Communicating to our men and women what they can do to make it safer.
Yeah.
What are we doing to communicate to them? How are we getting the message to train or whatever it is we're doing? How are we getting that message to the men and women?
Great question. I believe to date we've had 3 bulletins and/or memos go out, which isn't enough. So from the fire chief to Chief Mitchell in operations to the shift commanders, the BCs, face-to-face communication. Every BC has met with every captain to review those and hear their concerns, and their concerns that we would all have if we're in their shoes, and talk through it. And then more importantly, we talk about that communication back up the chain, because there's a lot of good ideas and awareness and stories that maybe aren't addressed or easily solved with just the blanket document that we send out. So that's a continuous process we're doing. As we get more information, either from a meeting or an output or a change from the sheriff, we're communicating that. And then the last piece, like Chief Keeley talked about, is the support from Dr. Can and the LEMSA, because the biggest concern is if I leave this scene, am I losing my paramedic license and my job? And so we worked extra hard with Dr. Can, including our medical director, Dr. Schmaltz, to write that protocol, and created a new assessment tool. We're not trained in assessing mental health patients from a distance. And so Dr. Can gave us some of that direction of if the patient if you're anywhere near and you can see or hear them or talk to them and it meets certain criteria, you can leave without risk. And that's a universal county-wide protocol that he and the county supported us doing. So back to your question is face-to-face communication, bulletins and memos going out as best we can to get that information out.
Thank you.
If I can add to that too, Director, we're currently going through our March EMS training, our multi-company March EMS training that's held here at this headquarters. And we are giving our members training in de-escalation. And so this is probably one of the only times that I can recall in training our members how to de-escalate a scene, because we don't have that backup anymore with the sheriffs coming. So we're teaching our members how body language can be perceived, how giving patients experiencing behavioral health emergencies options and not telling them what to do can get compliance. And so that's going out as we speak each day.
Thank you so much. Director Stark.
A few things. First of all, you're all doing an outstanding job. I really like the reports and everything you're doing. I'm extremely concerned about this issue that we were talking about. I echo Brian's comments. I spent 20 years in East Oakland, and in numerous times we'd go on calls where we'd have inaccurate information, and it's not the dispatcher's fault. It's just due to circumstances beyond their control, you get bad information, and we'd go to very, very hostile situations, even when you thought you didn't need the police. So one of the things I would just say to Brian is perhaps we need to be looking at some kind of state relief at some point. And to that, I assume that you all are documenting any kind of cases that regarding this so that we can provide testimony in the future if we need to go to the legislature to get legislative relief.
Yes, some of these unique situations are being documented and forwarded to the Sheriff's Department for their awareness of things that we're encountering to see how we can work better together, rather than just saying no, maybe bringing that pendulum back down so that they can go to some calls that are more appropriate for them to respond.
That's great, but I'd like us to also document those
Yeah.
for ourselves.
Yep.
So we can build a case when we need to go to the legislature to make some changes.
All those are archived, yes.
Thank you.
Director Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I echo Brian's concerns, and I'll just throw this out there. We've had a relationship with the sheriff's office forever, and it's been extremely positive, extremely positive. Something has happened in that dynamic that they have no recourse but to protect their men and women as well when they get sued by a family member because they had to do a serious issue. It's putting them at risk, and we need to recognize that. And what I would suggest, and I fully support the idea of, it is inappropriate for us to be on scene without their protection. And until that changes, I think we stop going, period. This organization can't lose a firefighter or one of our members because they did not have the appropriate defense, period. And then we put the onus on, Brian, I think you might have him on auto dial. And we get the state to get in front of this and figure out ways that the men and women who are law enforcement people, who we love, we absolutely love them. Something's put them in a position where they have no choice. They have no choice, which means that they can't do something. We need to give them relief by the governor acting now. But I totally agree with the idea. I cannot even imagine a crew being on scene of something that is dangerous. We teach every day scene safety. How many thousands of times have we heard that? And as soon as you answer no, you don't go. Forget all the politics. You don't go. And what are we doing going there today when we don't have somebody that's got the appropriate training and tools? I think those are important to manage that situation. We should be blocks away. And I mean, it should happen tonight until somebody at that big white building just a few miles from here says this is inappropriate. They generate emergency legislation. It takes the pressure off the men and women who have the tools and training and gives them an opportunity to come back to the scenes when it's appropriate. I think it should happen tonight, frankly. I can't imagine waking up in the middle of the night to a phone call that something, as Brian has articulated, occurs. And it's just every single day we're putting our men and women at risk. Totally inappropriate. Can't even imagine it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Sailors.
I 100% echo everything that has been said up here. Because I myself have experienced, I've been on a scene where the captain refused to wait for PD to come, and he went in. And while we loaded the shooting patient into the ambulance, the shooter came back and jumped into the back of the ambulance and shot him again. I never want anyone in this line of duty to ever experience witnessing something like that. So I 100% agree that we should never go into any of these scenes unless we have protection. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I do for the chief.
Director Weber?
Chief, is this something that you and Chief Mitchell can act on immediately?
I think the question comes down to, I want to answer a couple of things. This is all levels of communication, and I'm glad Chief Keeley talked about this, is that it's happening at our EMS training here currently, right? It's face-to-face communication. It's at our general staff meetings through the chain of command. Our BCs are going out to some of these calls. To your point, Director Rice, it's unacceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable. I think the piece we're missing here is that it's a communication we're getting from the call takers at times of bad information. When I hear that the sheriff is withholding information, that's a problem. That's a problem. That's unacceptable for any public service agency. Our relationship, my relationship with Sheriff Cooper is the same as it was before with this asterisk now. It's still healthy. We're all confused of why he is doing this. He has put us on our heels. He has put the County of Sacramento executives and the County Board of Supervisors on their heels, the County Health Department, the LIMSA, everybody. I want to be fair that the deputies are still wanting to help us. This isn't a field deputy problem. This is the sheriff making an action on his own. I don't believe when we have these meetings that it's really united support. This is the sheriff making a decision. There's other sheriffs in other counties not making the same decision. We have to do a better job at the call taker point of this. That's the next step. And I know Chief Mitchell's working on some stuff. I think he'll comment underneath his operations report. This isn't perfect for any of us. It's not perfect for the public we took an oath to serve on. Can we just blanketly say we're not going to respond to these calls? That's a no. I don't believe that's what I'm hearing from you as an ask. What I'm hearing is that, and what we are not allowing currently, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Keeley's done a great job at saying we are not responding to where we know it's a criminal intent call, if it has a criminal component to it, if we know there is a weapon there. It's the unknown component that we can't control or we don't have that information. It kills me from the last meeting where we had the attorneys in the room that Chief Keeley reported back that the sheriff is withholding some information. That's whether they have a legal obligation to or not, they should be providing us all the information possible so we can so our dispatchers and our crews have all that information. Our dispatch center sends all the information possible that they have to all of our crews to make an educated decision on this. This is putting everybody, our crews and the public, you and I, in an extremely bad situation. Because what we don't want to have is a call where we failed to act. And so what is that? Can we execute an absolute no call on these? I would ask, what does that look like? What's the no call? And that's where we're working on right now with operations and EMS to say, with the LEMSA, where is that line that we can say, with the information we have, we are absolutely not going. We're being very effective there. We have some protocols that are being adopted that the state's going to look at. It's not perfect today. But we don't want to go down the road of we're just not going to calls anymore. And that's not what you're asking us. But how do we identify which one is the unsafe one? We have to go with the information we're provided. The captains are making good decisions on these calls. We're sending the BCs now to where they're paying attention to the radio more, so we have a different level of supervision. And I know this is something that's a priority for Chief Keeley. I know how he works operationally in his leadership. He's actively putting in what is that stop. I think the next step for us is working with our comm center and the other 4 agencies, saying we need to put a better call taker mechanism in there to ask more appropriate questions, whether that's a practitioner or somebody that's going to reverse call back to law enforcement dispatch and say, I need all this information so we can send or not send. Make the decision, is this a go or a not go call? I'm not sure what that is yet. If we know there is a weapon, I don't believe we're going to those calls. That's an absolute stop. We've stopped that from day one. It's the what if call is where it's questionable. It's the when we show up and we see that it's changed, we're now doing a better job. I wouldn't say better. We're doing better communication to educate our crews. That's a back away before you even get involved, and we're going to support that with the LEMSA taking a stand and where we're looking at our paramedic and EMT's licenses. The relationship, I want to go back to that. I don't know what Sheriff Cooper is thinking on this. And when I've talked to the county executives or the health department with the county, they are in the same boat. They don't know what he's thinking on this.
I'll have to share that now.
Director Rice.
Chief, can we engage in mutual or automatic aid talks with the California Highway Patrol to respond to these incidents with us? Can we engage in mutual or automatic aid calls with the Sacramento Police Department to engage with us on these calls? The Citrus Heights Police Department, and I'm not sure the control of the Rancho Cordova Police Department as far as the sheriffs go, but if they're standalone, can we engage in either automatic aid or mutual aid protection from our associated law enforcement partners?
So your first question on CHP, yes, and they have been doing that as of yesterday. I can't speak about today. I don't know what that answer is, and I think Chief Mitchell knows better, so I'm a default part of this question to him. I'm telling you from my lens right now, Director Rice, I'm going to answer that question to my best ability of what I know currently. Citrus Heights PD is still a great partner. They're still responding like they did before. Rancho Cordova PD is a contractor with the sheriff. They're under the same direction as the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, so we have a challenge there. CHP has continued to support us as they have many moons ago. Hasn't changed. Are we utilizing them better than we did before? I believe the answer is yes. Those talks have been had with CHP and all their field offices. They are coming into calls that are different than what they've done before because they know they want to be a good partner and they know it's protecting the public and first responders. This is a Sacramento Sheriff direction.
Do our engine captains have, or our company officers, have the ability to request a California Highway Patrol to respond to an incident of question with our companies?
They have the ability to request at any point, Director Rice, absolutely. Whether they respond or not is subject to a lot of other things that we don't have control over. However, I will tell you this has been our number one priority since it happened back when we found out about it in a room on January, I believe it was 7th, somewhere around that time when we were brought into a room and told this was happening. So make no mistake, it's our number one priority. We have worked closely with the county executive and deputy county executives over public safety to address exactly what you're talking about. And to Chief House's point, other law enforcement agencies have not changed their standard based off the Ninth Court decision. We greatly appreciate that as an organization. Our members' safety is our number one priority. We still hold service delivery very highly, but our members' safety has to come before that so that we can make sure and provide that service. That has been made very clear in every single meeting we've been to, and we've been to numerous meetings, not just with the sheriff's office, with the dispatchers that was mentioned, with the county executives, county legal, health and human services, all of the partners that have been in the room. But make no mistake, best practice is a co-response. It's a law enforcement and EMS or clinician response. So we are highly dedicated to ensuring that we get that at some level now, right now. So
as I'm thinking about law enforcement agencies that are operating in this jurisdiction, RT has a police force. Have we engaged with them? Twin Rivers has a police force, or at least they used to have. I don't know if they've been disbanded. City of Folsom is independent. They have a police force. City of Elk Grove. I just think of this, you guys, and this is what I struggle with. These type of incidents are domestic incidents, and any cop will tell you the scariest incidents that they respond to are domestic because they don't know where they're going to go. And I know you guys are working hard on this, and I'm not coming at you on this, but it unfortunately, we've let the sheriff dictate this for too long, and now we have to take matters into our own hands and make sure that we have a law enforcement presence with our response companies, whether it's MIH, medic units, or engine and truck companies. And I'm telling you guys, when the bad one happens, are you prepared for that?
yeah. So I will tell you very specifically, and this has not been something that as public safety responders that we like to do at some level. Ultimately, we're here to provide service to our community, and it kills every one of us when we cannot do that to the best of our ability for reasons outside of our control. But I will tell you, based off of the work that the chief officers behind me that have talked about, the Chief House has talked about, that you are all talking about up here, when the info is received, and based off of, we want to make sure very clearly that the lack of communication is addressed. When we have the info that is received about any of the situations that you are talking about, our members do not and will not go on scene. And on scene means making patient contact or be close enough to where their safety is threatened. They have that ability now because of the work that has already been done, and rightly, I mean, not rightly so, but not to our desire, but in a reactive fashion, we've gotten there very quickly because we've looked at all those parts and pieces and worked hard to get that done. They are not going on scene when those situations exist where they have that ability right now today because of the work. That doesn't mean that we're done. As I said, best practice that's been very well documented and put out there on many different areas throughout the country is having law enforcement and EMS and fire personnel and a co-response, and also clinicians, because I'll tell you this, and some of the information when working with county health has been very enlightening to us. When these calls never hit our stations, when they hit a 911 PSAP and they are transferred to the right level of care with the right resource, when it gets to a clinician, 85% of the time they're able to de-escalate it and get those folks to the treatment level that they deserve or that they need, which is not necessarily go to the emergency department or have our crew members out there. So we know that's right. That's starting to happen. To what Chief House was saying earlier, we're getting to that level now, and I'm proud to say, because of our our insistence on that, the county health and what they've done to increase the staffing there, are starting to receive those transfers, and now we have a process in place to do that. And our members also have that ability to make those contacts in the field. When that communication comes up and they learn more about the call, they're able to make those connections before we're even on scene to not have to go into those situations like we're talking about.
So and I appreciate that, Chief Mitchell. And we in the fire service are our own worst enemy because we don't ever say no. And right now, that could be at our absolute peril. And I appreciate everything you're saying. I agree with it. It's a unified response to these type of incidents, EMS, fire, and fire-based EMS, fire response, and law enforcement. A critical partner has made a decision to not respond to these kind of incidents that happen multiple times every day in this jurisdiction that puts our men and women at risk. I get the communication breakdown with the comm centers, which even says to me more, if they can't get the adequate information, then they shouldn't be sending our people out. You're sending a bunch of canaries out there. They don't know what they're going to. So we can talk. I'll talk on this all night long.
Yeah.
We need to not be going. The other one that disheartens me was to hear that the sheriff has withheld information from us on incidents. Did I hear that correctly? Did I mishear it? Are we getting all the information, or is there withholding information on incidents? Has that happened? And if it hasn't, correct me right now. But if it has, is it documented, and do we have it?
I think this is legal information. They're claiming that from their dispatch center, call takers to our dispatch center, the information. Is the sheriff withholding information? No, I think it's from their dispatch center. The legalities of what they can share or they can't share is what they're telling us.
But
I think
Chief,
I hear you.
If it was the other way, I ain't going to the dispatch center, I'm coming to you.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
So
loud and clear.
that right there,
Director, they're sharing scene information. What they're not able to share is criminal background. It's just that it's been explained to me. It's very much like HIPAA. They cannot share outside of law enforcement. They're not allowed legally to share criminal backgrounds, which blew me away.
Chief, do they tell us that we have information we are unable to share with you at this time?
They don't.
They should at least tell us that so we can say we're not going.
There should be some type of warning. They should be, especially for violent felons or something like that, they should have to warn us in some manner, or we need to find legislative relief.
I'm not trying to get it out of your control, guys, but this is, pardon the pun, this is deadly serious. And we're being failed by a critical partner that we've always enjoyed a tremendous working relationship with, always. I don't know what the disconnection is, but if that's it, I don't want to fight with them anymore. I want to see if we can get an automatic or a mutual aid agreement with the California Highway Patrol and all the other independent law enforcement agencies out there that they will respond with our units on these calls, even if we have to pay.
We're working with the county exec and the deputy county executives on, and not just working on, it's in process right now. That is being addressed.
Director Gold.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Mitchell, how many captains do we have that work in the field? Round number.
170, 160.
How many battalion chiefs do we have?
15.
These are extremely brilliant people. This is such an easy fix. Why all this caca goes on, and it is stinking to high heaven. It's simple. I've got those people out there, and they can make a command decision right now, scene's not safe. End of story. It's over. We don't have to have any more additional conversation. A professional makes a decision that that scene's unsafe. It's over. And this idea that a paramedic's going to lose their license, they can't if it's not a patient. If you stay far enough away, they're a person in this community. This is so simple for me tonight, it's unbelievable. What's not simple is I have another engine company go on a call tonight and they don't have law enforcement present. Even if nobody knows it's problematic, but anybody that's been out in the field for a week would know something's not right. And we're done. And then however long feelings have to get fixed and laws have to be made, fine. Take whatever time you need because we don't go if it's unsafe. It's simple. I think a directive could be generated tonight from you all that says men and women who are brilliant practitioners in the field, If for any reason you feel it's not safe, don't go. And we'll have your back 1,000%. And if we have to make it a national issue, we'll make it a national issue. Because this is unacceptable. It's unacceptable for the spouse who kisses their firefighter goodbye at the beginning of a shift. None of this makes sense. And whatever the politics are, let those play out. But we won't be held accountable for having one of our members injured. And I would just say, it seems like after this meeting, a memo could go out, and it sounds like we're pretty close, and that may even be the way it's practiced. But if it came out in a pretty clear document from you, Chief, to me, it would be crystal clear for the men and women who you've just already said, or I did, they're brilliant. We got to have trust that they know what they're doing to save their own bacon and their crew. And then what all this other crap is happening and whatever's causing it, okay. But our boys and girls, our men and women are not going to be having to make those kind of decisions and run it the other way. That captain in that firehouse, if he's not happy or she's not happy with the amount of information we've got, stay in your fetching firehouse until somebody tells you what's going on.
So
Well, I got to stop. I'm going to have chest pain, and some of these fetching guys are going to have to come get me. This is ridiculous.
So I do want to be very clear, and if it wasn't made clear yet, our company officers and battalion chiefs are the folks that are making those decisions. They're empowered to do that right now. It has been made clear based off of all of the things that you heard from the other chiefs. They can make the decision to not make patient contact or go physically on scene to an incident right now today.
And we'll have
based off
their
of all that.
back as long as we have to. They should never concern themselves that we won't take them all the way to the Supreme Court if we have to. This is BS. I need a nitro. Who's got a fetch it? Thank you, sir. We gotta be just clear as mud.
I'm getting word that we have comment from John.
It's for me, I have no comment.
Oh, okay. Director Jones.
Thank you. I didn't hear what Lavra said. Is it critical? Oh, no, okay, thank you. A very, very, very intense situation here. And it's been this way since what, the January 7th announcement. I grabbed a grain of information here that we might be able to do very, very soon right now. It's the negative question, or to ask the PD, or to ask the sheriff dispatch, is there additional information that you cannot tell me? As a captain or battalion chief in the field, I would get on the air and ask that. And by saying yes, they don't have to tell me the details. If they tell me yes, I will tell my people to stand down. That might be a way to assist getting us to a safe place in making a decision. Captain, battalion chief, assistant chief. Get PD dispatch on the air, or however, and ask them, is there additional, that could be an incremental safety piece that we can use in our response.
Just
Director Stark.
on that, when the AIDS epidemic came out at first, and we had HIPAA requirements then, and we came up with the terminology that, universal precautions are required. Something like that would be appropriate in this case, I believe.
Yeah, excuse me, Director Stark, that situation in the 80s is exactly what was going through my brain when we were talking about this. How do we get the more information to help us in our decision tree?
Any other comments, questions? I do. Director Costa.
If I could, as you guys are hearing, there's a lot of passion on this subject, but I didn't want to lose sight of the presentation. You guys are doing a lot of great work. You're showcasing where we've been and where we're going, and what next year brings is great. So I want to thank you for all of the hard work you put into the presentation tonight, and thank you for all that you're doing.
Well, I would like to thank each of you for that passion. So we take it very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Moving on to our next item, strategic planning, Fire Chief Vision and Priorities. Jeff Fry, welcome. Good evening.
Good evening, and that's going to be very hard to follow. But I think it might help me in some of the things that I do want to talk to you about tonight. Forgive me, I am going to heavily rely on written notes tonight. There are some details I do not want to miss, and I also want to stay on point, given the number of presentations. So with that, I'll jump straight in and say good evening. This is a continuation of a presentation series I started last board meeting at President Wood's request to better understand the work going on behind the scenes related to strategic planning. And I'd like to continue the series by doing a deeper dive into the second step of the strategic planning process, which is establishing the fire chief vision and the priorities, which is how we get the work done. So really, as I mentioned last time, the board strategic plan is that 5-year North Star that we're trying to accomplish. The fire chief, the role of the fire chief and the office of the fire chief is then to turn that board strategic plan into a 1-year action plan through the vision and the priorities. So here are the goals for the presentation. First, we state and attribute the vision and the priorities to the fire chief, but as our CEO, the work extends beyond him and extends to the office of the fire chief. So I want to better define that executive function and specific to the office of the fire chief in creating this work. Secondly, I introduce a new strategic planning framework. We've been working hard to develop this in relation to how we get this work done. So I want to be able to talk about how we've integrated that and how it's defined the work, but it's also presented new challenges that I want to be able to discuss with you. Thirdly, if we talk about challenges, we want to talk about solutions. So we'll have a slide on here to talk about what we have found through this process. And finally, as I've committed to the board, through this entire process, we want to have better reporting and communication so everybody's on the same page. Okay, so again, very focused on this second piece, and this is really about the direction from the fire chief. So how do we get this done? And this particular part is really about the fire chief collecting information, getting input from all of you, from all of our stakeholders, and then we really think about this. I think about this as a fire chief being the CEO and being a large agency that serves in the fire protection to over 700,000 people with 700 members. This work really does take a team. And so I want to walk you through some of that. One of the questions that I've had for the last year and a half is how do we define the office of the fire chief? And should that team be an extension of the executive function of Metro Fire and specialize in this type of work, long-term strategic planning? So I will come back to that thought later, but last year we really recognized that we do need more than just a fire chief working in this space, and the office of the fire chief, as previously has been defined as an executive assistant, is not enough to really move the needle here. So we've asked Jill to step into a new role in a new space as our administrative service officer and help us get to a large aging mentality of strategic planning. And what we asked her to do specifically as Chief House took the realm is come up with a plan to be more persistent in this work to accomplish the long-term vision of the district. So with that understanding, diving straight into the first part of this, which is the fire chief vision, and this really is about Fire Chief Adam House. Really, that vision doesn't change. This is what he took the role coming in with. You hear him talk a lot about this work, and it's really stable over time. I expect it'll probably be stable over his tenure while he's here. What will happen is we'll probably see that refined messaging and the approach to the work. So while the fire chief is very focused on building relationships, exercising leadership, and establishing the vision, and we can directly tie this back to the conversation we were just having about EMS, It's really the Office of the Fire Chief to then take that information, turn it into a vision statement, and then get alignment to the board strategic plan. So that's the relationship that we're trying to describe here. So moving on from the vision and focusing on the Office of the priorities, which is how we accomplish the work. While the vision stays consistent, the priorities and the strategic priorities change every day. And again, I think the conversation that we were just having about the sheriff response is a great example of that. As we're trying to navigate this, we are in a constantly changing environment. So while those emerging urgent events come up, we still need to find ways to get this other work done. So I'm going to ask you to put on your CEO hat for a second and talk about how we manage this work. And I use a combination of the Eisenhower decision matrix and Kevin Eisenhower's decision-making matrix and Stephen Covey's priority matrix to describe this. So we have the 4 quadrants of work, ranging from important and urgent to not urgent, not important. And in each quadrant, we describe what is the nature of the work there. So in that top left-hand quarter, the quadrant run, important urgent work is really where we excel as a fire response agency. And this is the nature of the work. I would say the important non-urgent work is really, I have 2 categories highlighted there. This is really strategic planning, long-term forecasting, those type of things. The one thing I've noticed over many board strategic plans is we are unable to get to this important non-urgent work, again, because of the nature of the fire service. It is what it is. So we have asked and continue to train our chief officers to try to move toward that as a priority. But again, I'll use the EMS example we just talked about. When things like that happen, it's all hands on deck trying to get to the issue, right? So it's probably not realistic for us to think that we're really going to change that. So I think we should think about the work differently, and that's the point I'm trying to make here. So how do we create balance in the Office of the Fire Chief, and how do we prioritize effectively? We think the best person to administrate this is, again, our new Administrative Service Officer. And to be able to effectively how work in these quadrants are getting done and what teams are going to get them done. So before I move on, we have asked the fire chief to consider realigning how administrative work moves through this organization, through a reorganization. So we can specifically attribute and pay attention to work in all 3 quadrants here and make sure it gets done to the intent of the board. So while we expect that our fire chief and deputy chiefs will always be focused on the important and the urgent, we have talked about building an administrative services team that will then focus on the important non-urgent work, the quartile 2, and then being able to delegate that quadrant 3 work to admin support staff so that we can continue to function and move the district forward. So now I'm referencing both of the strategic planning frameworks here, and we need to reconcile the 2. So first, the framework on the left describes the who and the how, and then the framework on the right describes the what and the when. So we're really trying to combine these 2 graphics. So as you can see on the graphic of the left, we have swapped the role of the fire chief for the Office of the Fire Chief, simply stating that this work is going to get done by a team. And then secondly, we have also swapped out the role of the executive team for this proposed admin services team, who can really take ownership of this work and continue to move it forward. So with that as an understanding, I'll call your attention to the graphic on the right. We have really built this work so far, at least since my arrival, around the planning and development team. And we have our team members that specialize in each of these categories, these boxes, from service delivery to capital assets, revenue modeling, external engagement. So now we find ourselves in a position where what do we do when the work doesn't really fall into one of those boxes? or if it's long-term type projects. How do we build teams in areas that can start to address that work? So how do we do that? So we were working through this problem statement early in January, and we happened to go downtown to meet, I think it was for the swearing in of some of the supervisors. And I took Jill up to the 7th floor of the admin building where the county executive office is. And we were looking and doing a meet and greet and continue to work on our external engagement there. And I posed this question to the county deputy executives. How do they handle this situation? And they effectively described what I've just told you all. They do have dedicated teams, an admin support team, and then an admin professional staff that can help the deputy executives when something doesn't fit nicely into a box, or it falls across departments or divisions, or it's going to be a long-term strategic plan. They have teams in the office of the executive that accomplishes that work. I'm still working with the executives. They may be longer than the executives, so that work continues through administrations in line with these 5-year plans that we're talking about. So that obviously got us thinking slightly different about how we could implement this. We're not really looking to fully integrate that model, but there is something that will work for Metro Fire. So, as I said, Chief House always urges us to identify a problem and then a solution. So here are 4 of the problems that we have identified. First, that quadrant 1 work will always trump not urgent important projects in that quadrant 2. And again, this is the nature of the fire service. So we think the ASO is in the best position to manage this and keep executive staff focused on that work, which means we would then want to create that admin service team to focus on the long-term strategic planning and the board directives. So second problem is, since we are an urgent department, even the quadrant 3 work is still urgent, and that's how we respond. And that work also continues to be focused on more than the quadrant 2. So again, to keep the executive team focused where they need to be, to keep our long-term planners in that upper right-hand box tied to strategic planning, we think we can probably reorganize and create an admin support team to work that can be delegated. So third point here, projects that require cross-functional teams are deferred. They're difficult by nature. We have talked about working in silos here, and we have not worked on these projects, to be quite honest, because they do require bringing together multiple people to get the work done. The first real attempt at this, and success, I will say, is the project we're going to present here in a second, being the service delivery plan, where we truly put all the experts in the room and got the work done in pretty short order. So the solution here is to train the admin services team in these skill sets and these administrative skill sets to work across the district to bring teams together to get the work done. Final problem here is we're still really operating 1 year at a time. I think this is one of the focus I'll continue to keep in mind, and the board has continually encouraged us to build a 5-year projection instead of relying on the 1-year planning timeframe. So that continues to be a problem. We will continue to try to address that. A couple of things that I do want to note is Captain Hoy being assigned to the office of the fire chief. This has been tremendously helpful. It gives us that operational experience and understanding that we need to work in this space. We are thinking about that admin services team as a starting point. It's really Jill Guzman, myself, and Captain Hoy working in this space to see what this may look like. We are starting to see some successes here in this space, 4 or 5 months into it. And the other thing I want to mention here is all of this is actually a proposal to the fire chief, which will be considered with all of the other proposals. And we'll be back here in May to talk about the total package for the board. I think that's in line with what Director Rice said last time when we're talking about new positions and organizational changes and the dollars associated with it. We need all that information on one piece of paper. And so our intent is to bring all of this together in May with some direction from the fire chief to the board. So, to end with reporting and communications, last time I talked about the gap, and again, I can reference it here. Our daily operators are really caught up in that quadrant run, that urgent emergency daily issues. All of those issues, as they become urgent, they get raised in priority up the chain, and that often lands in our executive team's lap. So really, our entire organization is really built around the day-to-day. So understanding that, how do we get information from the crews, from the people doing the work, with recommendations tied to the board strategic plan, the fire chief vision and priorities. So we established a new process to collect that information, all the dollars associated with it, and send it directly to the office of the fire chief. All that information is now with Captain Hoy, who's going to summarize it, and that will be in front of the board in May, as I alluded to. When that information is collected, we then turn it into a project to get it done and implemented back into the operations. So we think this is the first step in better reporting and communication, not only to our managers and staff, but also for the board. So again, here's the schedule. As I noted, the next time you'll hear from us on this particular topic will probably be May 8th. We do have a couple of other presentations tied to Measure O and the CIP in the meantime. So again, we're just trying to keep you updated on the work that we're doing in this space. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions, but I also realize it's been a lot of information tonight, so.
I've got a few questions before I turn it over. You talked about there's already been a captain assigned to this team?
So on a temporary assignment, Chief House placed Captain Hoy in the office of the fire chief. And when I said we asked Jill to start to figure out what a better team looks like, we wanted to get some help there because there is a lot of work there and we do have a lot of other tasks and duties. And then so Captain Hoy still runs our hazmat program, but realigning in the office of the fire chief in his spare time, we've started to put together some of the information that you heard tonight. So he has been helping us with that on a temporary assignment. Our recommendation to the fire chief is to make that more permanent nature so we can continue to get movement here.
Is that recommendation something that's been made already?
No.
In the framework slide, we talked about, you used the term "we" and reaching solutions and changes. Looked like there were some changes that had been made already with regard to the admin team and the office of the fire chief. Who was involved in the decisions making those changes?
It's the executive staff discussion with the fire chief with the intent of accomplishing this work.
There's about 6 people, it sounds like? The executive staff, the deputy chiefs, any assistant chiefs?
Have we talked about this at general staff? I feel like we have.
We've talked about it, where we made the initial decision on making the recommendation to look in the future, so we're planning more appropriately, not just reaction to the now. And so we can plan into to well-advanced, not just total reactionary. We have the 3 deputy chiefs, myself, the chief financial officer, chief human resources officer, Jeff Fry, and Jill Guzman, so it's 9 on the executive team.
We got anyone from labor in the group talking about how this structure's going?
No. So this has been in experimental mode. So this is the communication piece. We have tested it. We have some theories. Again, it's to the chief as a recommendation. Again, with all of the recommendations, those collectively will go to the executive staff for communication. That will go to general staff for communication. 522 is a part of that. And then it'll come back to the board.
As it goes down, it's not going to be a fait accompli as it goes down, is it? When it goes down to general staff, is it still an open discussion for everyone that's there?
Yes.
It's not going to be something, this is what we're doing, we're just telling you guys this is what we're doing. We're not there, are we?
No, that's never been chief's intent. It is to basically anybody that can be affected by the plan has input into the plan.
And it sounds like we're having some personnel changes, whether one might be temporary or not. Is this, are we reclassifying people right now? Is there something like that going on? I've got concerns because, like I talked about last week, we've got a whole bunch of people that, a whole bunch of departments that have people that are needed there.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that we have people ready to put radios in the new engines we're going to get hopefully in this year, and ready to, in facilities, manage the new work we're getting. We got a contract coming up. We're gonna have a whole new station. Facilities needs people. Fleet needs people. They're behind, and I want to make sure we have the resources going to those divisions.
Sure.
And not into some of this other reorganization.
Sure.
I'm just concerned that this is a good idea to look at this, but I don't want to get out over our skis on this when the rest of the work is crumbling.
So let me frame it this way. To give you that information, to have that conversation, we need this team to do this work so we can provide you with the information to have that discussion. If we don't have the people or this team that we've put together to do this work, there's nothing we can bring to the board or to general staff to have this conversation. So this is us trying to take people we have, no reclassifications, people just willing to do this work on their own time because it's the right thing to do to get the board the information they need. Like I said, Captain Hoy manages the hazmat program. You know, Jill has her day-to-day assignments. I have mine. We're just really doing this with whatever extra time we can find to pull information together so that the board and general staff and everybody can have these conversations.
I'm just concerned, at least from my perspective, when we come back in May 8th, and I can't speak for anyone else up here, but I would think that most of us would have a concern about what comes back on May 8th, that it's not, we're going to take care of all of these people, but our mechanics and our radio people and our IT people and our HR and our payroll aren't going to get the help they need.
Sure. So our intent to at least give you some initial findings and the information that we've collected, I am proposing to do that on April 24th. So that will be a pre-awareness or pre-discussion, again, with general staff, with the board, ahead of any recommendations coming to the board as a tied to preliminary budget.
Appreciate that. Director Costa, and then we'll go to start.
Thank you. To build off some of the questions, I just want to make sure I understand. Because you mentioned a reorg, so that's not happened.
It's proposed.
This is all proposed, okay. So then, at some point, we'll see a financial impact of a potential
Yes.
reorg, okay. And then all decisions, this is a way in which to take it in
In
pieces.
chunks, exactly.
And then we all get a chance as an organization to give feedback, but ultimately, a decision will come to this board to be made.
Yes.
Okay.
So again, what I have found confusing in the past is we take all of this as one big recommendation and a lump sum as a part of a budget request. And I think that's terribly confusing. So again, the intent is to give you chunks of information as the information is being developed, leading up to the decision as a tied to preliminary budget.
Perfect. And that also includes, that also includes, I think you mentioned administrative services officer. That's part of the proposal.
No, so that was approved by the board last year.
Okay. So that's a position that's been approved and funded. These other things are just part of the broader plan that you'll bring back to.
Yeah, with everything that Director Wood mentioned, we have all those requests. We're going to put all that information together and consider it as a whole package.
Perfect. Thank you.
Director Stark.
I understand that this is all preliminary as we're building it out, right? Because Measure O is going to have a huge amount of labor that's going to be involved just at the planning stage. But are you suggesting that Captain Hoy will be at least preliminarily the person that will gather information from the different sources like subject matter experts from the rescue or from hazmat, getting facilities and the folks that run the apparatus, getting their input, getting the end users' input? It'll start with Hoy?
Right now, related to position and budget requests very specifically. Related to capital projects Measure O, that'll continue to be Aaron and myself. Anything capital project related, we will continue to reach out to those people directly.
Yeah, and I would imagine though, as we spin up, to efficiently get the $400,000 or $400 million worth of projects done, plus impact fee projects, et cetera. We're going to need to get you more help to get these projects going. But then we're all concerned about getting the input from services that are going to come out and deliver all the supplies and everything else. It's going to apparatus and everybody else, it's going to have to expand. And you're going to come back with more details on how that's going to happen?
Yeah, with the information we have. Again, this topic has never been tackled by the district. So as I've described in this presentation, we're trying to find our way. We're trying to accomplish the board's intent. There are stumbling blocks along the way. I feel like the work in planning development tied to service delivery, capital planning, we're really solid there. What we don't have well defined is what I'm referring to as the staffing plan. How are we going to get more people? How are we going to afford them in a one-year increment, but also looking 5 years out in the future? So that is the big flaw. That is the area of work that we have not focused on yet. So we're doing our best now to catch up with that information as much as possible, to integrate it into our communication plan. So again, that we have awareness not only at the board level, but at general staff and with executive staff.
And that's what Captain Hoy is, you're going to have him start doing.
That's what we asked
Clearly,
him to
he's not going to be able to do hazmat and that as we.
So I think we're all in that, and I'll throw myself in that category too, managing Measure O, the service delivery plan, trying to figure out a staffing plan, which I've talked to Chief is well outside of what I do as a Chief Development Officer. I think we're trying to do this work to help the board, to help the fire chief, to get some of these answers to help staff. And we're really doing it really on our own volition. So I hear all your challenges. We have the same concerns. The best we can do right now is, because the budget is tight, is just to hope that people are willing to do this work to get us the board the answer.
Director Rice.
Couple of questions. When you refer to a staffing plan, define that for me.
It's actually in the board strategic plan. There are 4 elements in the members. There's a recruitment and retention request, there's professional development and training, and then the board references like a hiring plan or a staffing plan. So again, the intent is to identify the need of the people in a 1-year and a 5-year increment, and then also attach some professional development training to that. So the board, I collectively refer to that work as the staffing or the hiring plan, straight out of the board strategic plan.
Okay. And is labor a part of that?
Yes. So again, this is brand new. We have not tackled this work. We are conceptualizing this. Our intent is to take that information to general staff.
I don't mean be part of general staff.
You're
I
talking
mean
about
having a seat at the
labor
table.
man- Copy.
Having a seat at the table.
So not only a seat at the table, but it was talked about just this week with our labor management meeting. And for them to bring back recommendations, and that what Captain Hoy is doing is collecting all those position requests from all of our division managers that are having requests. Roughly 60, let's call it right now, right? He's collecting all those. We're gonna talk about that in labor management meetings specifically. Labor's gonna come back, Captain Scholar agreed that he would come back and give a recommendation from his lens and what labor's suggestion would be on this. And then it goes to general staff. It'll be truly all of our division managers and AC's command staff and above, collectively making this recommendation. And part of that is putting it in priority. So we talk about like needing more mechanics, right? That is true. When is that timing that we need them? Because if we order more rigs today, they don't show up for 4 years. So what is the right person that in this budget that we can support continually? Maybe that's facilities that we have to hire a new person for because we can start that work faster. That's something we haven't done in this organization, really to look at it from the 5-year plan and really with some handcuffs on that we can't control. The permitting process that we know going through for new construction. We have to look at that and get that. That's part of the external engagement. That's one of my priorities in the last 18 months was saying we need to have that external engagement so we really understand the city of Citrus Heights permit and building department better and have a face-to-face relationships to understand how much time it's going to navigate an increase in building construction for our Citrus Heights stations. Same with Rancho Cordova. So we're taking that entire package and looking at it and then going to make a recommendation with labor, yes, to what is the appropriate position we can do next? Because obviously we can't fund right now hiring 60 people. And that's the request. Every division manager and leadership, right? I would be doing the same thing. Every division manager wants more people and more money. So we're taking all that in as a package, and that's what Jeff's alluding to right now. We had to come up with a team to be able to capture all that information, then evaluate it on a very quick surface level, give the information back to the division managers, and that's what Hoy is making that to be very consistent on. Here's the expectation of the information we need so we can make a very educated, fiscally responsible, but what does it look like in the future for a priority in the next position that's going to be made?
Is Captain Hoy labor's appointment, or is he reassigned from his job? Is he your choice?
He is my choice.
Okay.
Yes.
What I would
He's
say,
filling the position that we knew, like Darren Taylor in the past had filled.
what I would say is you're going to be miles ahead to have labor have a seat that they can appoint someone, and it's going to work better. And then the responsibility is on labor to be a partner and to work through the process. I highly recommend that. I've been around this block as much as anybody at this table, but from a different seat. So I think you need to go there, Chief. I need to meet with you. I want to talk to you personally about your vision. I appreciate, Jeff, your overview and everything, but I think that's one that I would really want to just sit with you one-on-one. I'll make an appointment to do that because I want to catch your vision from you. That's important to me. I understand the needs, and I do agree with that. We're going to have some structure. But I have some caveats in there. There's some things that are happening that I'm used to, having a captain assigned to the fire chief's office. That has been done 20 years ago. It was done successfully. That's something that I understand. There's also something else that I've watched happen that I will not support. And what I will not support are any rank or positions created with rank for civilian staff. I will not support that. I'm not saying that was proposed here or even talked about, but that's going to be a red herring for me as a public safety professional. When it goes bad, I want to talk to you and you guys, and the public's going to talk to me. You know, so we need to be really, really clear on that. If we're going to make assignments and reassign people, again, it's what the fire department does best, and it's to our detriment. We just keep loading people up until they break, and I don't like that. But we got to figure out a way through this. I just want to be very, very careful and very, very clear. You got to have labor to be a part of it because you got to have the tailboard firefighter buy-in. We can't lose. We have to have them. But that also means the responsibility is be in your lane. Be a team member. When you're asked to be there, be a team member. I know they'll do that. Nobody gets to take their ball and go home on any side. And the expectation is we work together and we build a process so that we can receive $400 million that the public has entrusted to us. And then we can disperse that with results that benefit the public we serve. That's all I ask. I want to be very careful on position creation and role and responsibilities. It is a little tough for me, Jeff, and it isn't anything personal. It's not personal for you either, Chief, but it's hard for me to not listen to the fire chief to give me his vision. And that's just me. That's my own personal hang-up, and I want to do that with you because I want to catch that vision from you, which I know I can. So those are my comments.
So I do want to say, I heard you all. For me, really my goal in all this is, and I'll reference what Director Stark said, to bring all this out to the light, to have a conversation, to make sure we're making good decisions with communication to everybody. So really, the reason why I've asked to do this series is to take a real focus and get it out into the public and to the board from the dais to have these conversations to get to the best answer. So I will continue to do these series. I will, from time to time, continue to talk about some of these topics where we need to have an education. I can see some of it happening from the dais. I can also see, to your point, Director Rice, some of those might be one-on-one conversations. But again, my point is to get to better and to get to best, we need this level of dialogue.
Any other questions, comments for Jeff?
If I could.
Director Costa?
Jeff, thank you for pulling all this together, and I look forward to meeting one-on-one to talk a little bit further. I know it's tough. You know, there's 9 of us, and we all have a different vision, so thank you for trying to pull it all together.
Of course.
Yeah, it's a huge load, Jeff, and I appreciate all the work you've done to make this cohesive and coherent and easy to understand in chunks. It is a lot better rather than dumping something big on us all at once. So I appreciate that. If you want to stick around, love to hear the next one. Oh, Director Gold's got something while
Mr.
that's
Chair,
being pulled up.
could I make a motion that we treat my bladder to a bit of a 5-minute break? We've been grinding for 120 minutes, and I'm just wondering if we could just take 5. I know Bob needs it.
We'll take a break for 5 minutes.
That's why I got it.
You didn't get a second on that motion.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
All right, thanks so much for the indulgence. We'll get right back into the presentation. I think we're in the home stretch now, so thanks. Take it away, Jeff.
Sure. So this is a brand-new project, somewhat tied to what we were just talking about, service delivery plan. Really, the purpose of the project was tie together the standard of cover to the linkages we just described, like staffing, like CIP, that's integrated into the board. So this is a deep dive into operations. I do want to start with a huge thank you. You can see the list here, and probably to Director Rice's previous point, since there was a heavy focus on operations, we did have a lot of representation here. We try to include all ranks, all perspectives, to make sure we got to the right answer. So I know we now need to expand this idea that I was just describing to other aspects of what we do, including some of the like support services and administration. So this is where we kind of want to go, getting that full integration into how we plan and accomplish these projects. So a big thank you to all these people. A lot of them are in the room. This was a really heavy lift. Work accomplished in 4.5 months, starting in November. We pushed to get this ready for preliminary budget and this discussion so that, again, better decisions can be made. So huge thank you. Again, a lot of you are here. This was a ton of work. Appreciate it. I do want to take a second and just talk about lessons learned for me. We did an after action on this project with Chief Mitchell, Chief Wernicke, Chief Johnson, and myself and Jake to talk about how this happened. I now have appreciation for how hard it is to be on shift and then to try to do some of this administrative work. So a lot of these people are on shift and fought, doing the homework on the nights and the weekends over the holidays. So if we can then, getting back to my previous station, try to find some balance with a team that can do the majority of the lift and help the members get the input to take the relief on them. That's kind of an ideal situation for creating that team that I just described. Again, I won't go into depth here. Again, just trying to achieve alignment from board strategy through Fire Chief lens and get it incorporated with the membership. I will say, trying to capture all the intent from the board, from the Fire Chief, from the Deputy Chief of Ops. Our project leads on this were Chief Johnson, Chief Wernicke. They had a number of things they wanted to accomplish. And of course, the members had a number of things that they also wanted to accomplish in proposing the new work or where they need help. So getting all that to align, I felt was on planning and development, to put together the report, to continue communication, and then make sure that information is written down and repeatable in future years, getting to those 1-year and 5-year looks that, again, I just described. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jay for the details into the project.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Directors, Chief House. Happy to be here with you all again. I appreciate that lead-in to the service delivery plan. So let's talk about what this service delivery plan is and what it's composed of. There are two major subplans to this. There is a station master plan, which is a long-term plan for service delivery. That is focused through a 40-year lens and a 5-year lens. That is our long-term perspective. There's also the direct service delivery plan, which is the more immediate plan for service delivery, which is now through the next 5 years or so. It's the quicker lens, right? So to help explain these two things together and to contextualize them, the service delivery plan is meant to be a standalone document. However, this first year, we included the station master plan, like I said, to help contextualize both the immediate service delivery needs and the long term and what we're going to be needing 40 years out down the line. So next year, the station master plan will be included in the standards of cover, and moving forward, this will be a standalone document for more immediate service delivery needs. So with that said, let's talk about those two plans and what they look like. Our station master plan. So the station master plan, as I said, takes a long-term view of the district service delivery and considers the needed facility additions to support service many years into the future. So getting into the specifics of this, the 40-year plan finds that we will need 14 new fire stations to support service demands from the projected population growth of our new communities. We will need 13 existing fire station expansion projects or relocations to address existing deficiencies or to meet future service needs. And we will also need 4 new battalions to ensure adequate command coverage with these new station additions and also to meet effective response force considerations. On that note, I do want to emphasize a point that Director Stark made at our last service delivery meeting. He pointed out that this is a living document. As we take in more information and learn through service delivery, through meeting with this team, this document will be updated and improved. A great example of this are the recent discussions that we have had with our team on this 40-year plan and what our future battalions will look like. The map you're looking at is our first attempt at a battalion renumbering that would be necessary for the station additions under the 4-year plan that we're currently discussing. After discussion with our service delivery team, there was a shared consensus that we should pay homage to our history by mimicking our historical battalion numbers, specifically right in that area between Battalion 5 and 13, where it currently says 6, that is the historical Battalion 12. We will be recreating that. So that 6 will be 12, and we will pay homage to our historical battalion numberings. Listening to our membership and minding that this is a living document, we will make those battalion changes and incorporate this and just continue to update our information and these plans as we get better and take in information. So while the 40-year plan is a long-term plan for future service delivery needs, the 5-year plan considers shorter-term projects that will be implemented over 5 years to resolve existing and anticipated service delivery needs within that shorter time frame. The stations noted in the table above reflect projects necessary for 5-year improvements, and these projects are also identified in the 40-year station master plan. To that regard, the 5-year plan is essentially a snapshot of the 40-year plan, just through a 5-year perspective. You will notice project timing ranges from in progress to needed now, all the way to in less than 5 years. In fact, actually, as we look at that, a majority of these projects are needed right now. That is because some of these projects are looking backwards to accommodate facility and space challenges that have always existed. You can think of some of our smaller and older stations like 42 or 103 that are 50-plus years old and are overdue for an upgrade. Others are looking forward, but do still need to happen right now to help support call volume patterns and response standard shifts that are actively increasing. So let's transition to the actual service delivery plan of the service delivery plan. Whereas the station master plan offers a long-term plan to address the future needs of district operations. That service delivery plan takes a closer look at existing operational stressors and asks, what can we do right now to improve service delivery? Sometimes those desired improvements can only be achieved through facility additions or expansion projects. However, implementing meaningful improvements to service delivery doesn't always have to be a construction project. This is why service delivery projects often manifest as apparatus movements or additions, which have less, if any, facility impacts. As Jeff alluded to earlier, the collaboration of this team was extremely meaningful and helpful to putting this process along. And that cross-functional aspect of having a quantitative data analysis from the planning and development team, as well as the qualitative operational experience from our service delivery team, really found us the sweet spot of getting all the right people in the room to put these projects together and find out what better for Metro Fire looks like. So when we develop service delivery projects, there are specific criteria and considerations that we use to yield our recommendations. These projects seek to improve first responder coverage, workload variables, and effective response force assembly. The following criteria for reliability, time on task, and effective response force are used, whereby we can evaluate scoring metrics for each of those using good, fair, and poor so that we have consistent methodologies across all of these. As we evaluate reliability, we grade a project area on how often a first responder unit is actually the first arriver to any incident in its own first due. As we evaluate time on task, we grade how busy each unit is and whether they have adequate time to train, rest, recover, do all the other important things they need to do when they're not actively on incident. And as we evaluate effective response force, we grade whether a first in area is able to assemble the necessary apparatus in an appropriate amount of time to meet the response needs of any given incident that they may come across that day. So once each first in area receives scores for each one of these criteria, we can prioritize them accordingly. To address the workflow of this process, the team can start to evaluate projects once evaluation criteria have been established and those criteria have been prioritized. Weighing in both criteria and priorities, service delivery project recommendations can then be made. These recommendations have staffing and capital need implications, for example, by adding or moving a resource throughout the district, and will then be submitted through annual CIP and staffing plan processes. With that said, it may be necessary to consider alternatives when a recommended project is not feasible due to budget, staffing, or facility challenges. In light of that, the service delivery team does consider alternatives that will achieve similar outcomes, but just are more feasible in the short term. So after receiving scores for reliability, time on task, and effective response force, each service delivery project is prioritized using the following rankings before you. So priority 1, service delivery projects are only considered for first due areas in urban, dense urban, and metropolitan areas. As we know, the majority of Metro Fire's call volume is in these areas. Priority 2 is first dues with poor reliability. As we know, reliability impacts response times, drawdown, and efficiency. Within priority 2, there was 1 fire station identified. However, no further action is needed at this time, as that station is within our 5-year station master plan, so it is accounted for. Priority 3 is first responder or transport unit time on task, specifically where it is poor. As we know, time on task impacts member health, safety, and wellness. Within priority 3, there were 5 units identified with poor time on task. You can see those before you. And priority 4 is first dues with poor effective response force coverage. As we know, ERF assembly impacts our incident resolution, our efficiency, and also the safety of our personnel when they're on scene. Within that priority 4, there were 8 stations identified with poor ERF for battalion chief coverage, another 8 identified with poor ERF for truck coverage, and another 5 were identified with both poor battalion chief and truck coverage. The service delivery team put together recommendations based on this information to address first responder time on task, transport time on task, and effective response force coverage that we just spoke about. Recommendations include adding squads, adding contracted transport units, and making movements to accommodate these unit additions. Recommendations also include adding a truck and a battalion chief to address ERF coverage. If implementing all of these recommendations simultaneously is not feasible, the group outlined the alternatives shown here to address partial implementation strategies. I will now invite Jeff back up to explain how some of these recommendations and alternatives fit into the larger strategic planning picture.
So I'm going to be quick because we've talked about this quite a bit tonight. This is the first time that we have complete linkage from collecting the information, evaluating it, being able to put that into a staffing plan request, to quantify it with dollars, to understand the capital impacts, the future stations, the future rigs, to be able to look 5 years out, put that into our preliminary budget process, and put it in front of the board for better decision-making. So in regard to our suppression, this is really the first time that we can go from A to D, which is what the board has told us to do from the beginning. I will say now we need to replicate this in the administrative branch and the support services branch, tied to all the things that you all have just talked about. So hopefully this is a vision of where we're going, and we just want to be able to tie together all these pieces for you.
Thank you, Jeff. Could not have said it better myself. So wrapping things up, we're very proud of this inaugural effort on the service delivery plan. Though being Metro Fire, we are already thinking about what we can do the next time around to make sure that we do this better. To address timing, our annual service delivery efforts should happen sooner in the year following our standards of cover completion, and that is so that recommendations and alternatives are better positioned for consideration in district budgets. To address our own analysis internally, we must develop a framework for analyzing expected costs and gains of projects and alternatives, so that looks like a better cost-benefit analysis. In addressing our own response models, we must develop better models for special operations response so that all risk types, regardless of likelihood or frequency, are planned for, as oftentimes we focus on fire EMS and some of the command coverage responses. So making sure that all of our potential response scenarios are included in projects like this. On that note, that concludes the presentation. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. I would be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you so much, Jake. Do we have any questions from Director Rice?
Just I appreciate the report. Just some questions on the priorities. When Metro Fire was formed, I was part of the first standard of coverage through Citygate and worked on that through the third edition of that. And so some of my questions on the priorities, is it time and distance, or especially on priority 4, first dues with poor coverage, is it time and distance, or is call volume, secondary call volume, fire activity considered in any of these projections or strategies?
Very good question, sir. So just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, you're asking about our initial first response, right, of that like first in engine coverage type of thing. Because when we look at priority 4, those are the second and third in units we're looking at, and on our larger incidents, say that second truck company that's going to give you truck coverage or battalion chief coverage. And so when we look at the priorities, that priority 1 being in urban, dense urban, and metropolitan areas, that is for the first responder coverage in those areas where we are getting that first responder incident need. Am I getting at what you're indicating?
We're kind of getting there. I go back to, there was a move when Fire Station 29 was built, and the uninformed decision was to move Rescue 21 there. And then we were retasked through the standard of coverage process to evaluate that. And part of that evaluation was more than just time and distance. It was where the majority of the fire activity was, where the majority of the secondary calls were, what the secondary call coverage was. And although we built a beautiful fire station, the nuts and bolts of it was that company was stationed in the exact right spot to have access to the highest and the most dense fire activity that we had was kind of through 41, 42, 24, 103. And if we would have moved it, it would have given poor coverage in all regards, but great coverage to the city of Folsom as a secondary or a primary truck. And that, when we're looking at that stuff, there's so many tools out there. The International Association of Firefighters has a standard of coverage that they do for free. You know, have we considered that? I want to know a lot more when we're trying to do our own internal standard of coverage and exactly what are we doing and what do we consider. And one of the things that stood out to me was Stu Gary, who is a principal of Citygate, and he told all of us, he said, if you just use a metric, which is time and distance and statistics, you'll get it wrong.
Yeah.
You have to use real life and you have to use real life experience. And I just want to know that these kind of considerations are involved in that.
Yeah, so really our intent is to build on the Citygate work. Yes, we do take into account time and distance. We do use software packages that allow us to measure all of those from one point to another fixed point. So there's many calculations. But to your point, we've also emphasized risk and where the risk hazards are less and greater in relative to a call type. So to Jake's point, we understand that very well related to the basics fire and EMS. To your point, we do need to figure out the deeper dive into the special operations piece, and especially in growth areas. So as we kind of have it figured out in north part of the county, now we need to take all that information with our technology and their experience and apply that to the South County. So I hear what you're saying. We are trying to refine our tools and abilities. We have looked at a lot of people's efforts in this place and what our best practices, what the consultants are doing, but also what the other departments are doing that are out in front. So we are trying to accomplish that. And again, I think at least for the next couple of years, we're hoping that's a dialogue with the subject matter experts, with our information to get to the point you're trying to make.
And I think we're referring to our subject matter experts as the men and women that are performing the
Yes,
service.
sir. That's exactly
Thank you.
right. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I'll just,
Director
sorry, really,
Costa?
really quick. Great presentation. A lot of good information, so thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Again, thanks so much. Appreciate that. So we'll move on to our action items. Action item 1 of 2 is a resolution for the pre-qualification of general contractors. Aaron Castleberry, welcome. Good evening.
Good evening, directors. I will keep it very brief. The good news is we're getting to the point where we are starting to plan for the construction mobilization for our Station 67 project in the Vineyard area. Based on our timeline estimates at this point in time, we are hoping to put that project out to bid over the summer with a construction commencement in the fall. As you know, we are required to let the contract to the lowest responsible bidder. And this is our effort to ensure that our bidders are responsible, in fact. So the Public Contract Code does allow us to pre-qualify contractors to ensure that we are receiving responsible bidders. That is what we are asking for tonight. There are some guidelines around that. The board must adopt a pre-qualification process. There are some requirements around what that process has to look like. There has to be a standardized questionnaire. There has to be a metric that's universally applied. We have provided in the documents that questionnaire as well as our request for qualifications. And we are requesting that the board adopts that pre-qualification process tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions you have on that.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Castleberry?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we adopt the resolution as stated in the agenda.
I've got a motion and a second. Can we get the roll, please?
Yes, Director Saylors.
Aye.
Director Gould.
Aye.
Director Stark.
Aye.
Director Clark. Director Rice.
Aye.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Director Weber.
Aye.
Director Costa.
Aye.
President Wood.
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next action item is over to you, Madam Clerk.
Yes. Yes, you guys have the staff report. I've seen this has come up a few times, and the last few times the board chose not to nominate somebody, but you have the option to nominate a member of the board or a general manager position to join the California Special Districts CSDA Sierra Network Seat B for the 26 to 2028 term. The deadline for receiving nominations is April 11th. So if you want to consider nominating somebody, there is a list of several things that this person would have to do as far as attend board meetings, usually 4 to 5 a year, participate in at least one committee, which meets 3 to 5 times a year, attend a minimum of the following CSD annual events, which they list there, and then complete 4 modules of the CSDA Special District Leadership Academy within 2 years of being elected. So, or you can select not to nominate anyone.
Do I have any comments, questions, or nominations from the board?
Mr. President, again, it would be, is anyone interested in we all are interested in CSDA. Is there anyone that has the bandwidth to, I'd be glad to support anyone who wants to run for this seat. I do not. I offered this to Director Rice, and he graciously declined as well.
Okay, no action then?
No action.
All right, thank you.
All right, moving on to reports. President's report, I have nothing. Fire Chief's report. Welcome back, Chief.
Thank you. I will keep mine short tonight as this is a long meeting. But good evening, directors, colleagues, members of the public. I just wanted to take a couple minutes and let you know that we did have a health and wellness fair today. I think you guys all knew about that. It was extremely successful. We had presentations that were cutting edge. We had presentations that were very good on overall wellness. Some vendors out there, and I just want to give kudos to Coach Gallagher on the tremendous work in setting up that program. I know some of you attended today, and it was received well. We had partners from Sacramento City Fire Department show up, and a lot of our members in and out of that wellness fair today. So great job, Coach Gallagher. And then last week, we attended the Fresno Training Symposium, and I just want to make note that we had 39 of our members down there as instructors. And I believe the comment that I heard from the Fresno Training Consortium and that we had the most instructors of any agency down there. So we had instructors teaching stuff from live fire training to advanced RIC to hose pulls to firefighter safety and survival, elevator rescue. Our engineer cadre was down there with sold-out classes throughout the week, and command and lead class. So it was pre-COVID numbers down there. They were over 600 students down there, and I think 39 instructors spoke volumes about the talent and skill set from this organization. So thank you for everybody that attended the conference, and thanks for the instructors that really did a great job preparing, and all the comments that I heard from the cadre down there was that the classes were well received on every aspect. And then the last thing, I just want to put a reminder, tomorrow is a significant day for the organization. Zinfandel groundbreaking. We'll break ground on phase 3 of the Zinfandel training facility at 09:30 tomorrow morning at the Zinfandel site. That's the end of my report unless you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Chief. Any comments or questions? No? All right. Thank you. Moving on, operations report. Deputy Chief Mitchell, welcome.
Yes, thank you again, President Wood, directors, Chief House, colleagues, members of the public. You heard earlier during the EMS review about the EMS excellence coins that our EMS division has given out. Chief Rudnicki, under his leadership, started that. Chief Keeley's continuing that. I'd like to invite Chief Rudnicki and Chief Keeley back up to the podium so we can do a live version. And Chief Perryman.
So one of the highlights of my time in EMS was the opportunity to hire a CQI manager, and I'm going to embarrass him and bring him up right now. Adam Blitz, why don't you come on up and join us? And you know, there's few people in EMS that just have such a passion and a love and genuinely care about the service that we deliver. And it was It was a great couple years I had and pleasure to work side by side with him in the division. And he really brought this positive light and energy to our team. And he's going to continue that for a long time. And so I'm going to kick it over to Chief Keeley for the formal presentation to Adam.
So a little history between me and Adam. We met in the early 90s when both of us worked on the private ambulance together. He worked at a larger agency called Foothill. I worked at a smaller, cooler agency called Superior. But the great thing was, because we ran so many calls and we shared a border, we would see each other at the hospital, and I got to know Adam and his quality of patient care. But ultimately, what really impacted me was his compassion for the patients that he transported consistently. And that carries through today. So we would like to recognize him as a member of Metro Fire with this commendation. It's a great honor to commend you, Adam, for your unwavering dedication, expertise, and leadership in continuous quality improvement at Metro Fire. You have been instrumental in creating a new EMS culture that mentors, supports, educates, and improves the skills, knowledge, and abilities of all paramedics. With over 33 years of EMS experience, you have a deep understanding of the challenges and realities faced by paramedics in the field, which allows you to uniquely coach them. Your diligent efforts have had a profound and far-reaching impact on the personnel and communities we serve. Your commitment to fostering a culture of excellence through data-driven analysis, station visits, and performance feedback has significantly enhanced the quality of care provided in the field. Those efforts have indirectly improved the outcomes of thousands of EMS incidents and positively affected countless lives. It is with great admiration and appreciation that we recognize you for your outstanding service, innovation, and dedication to the EMS profession. As recognition of your excellent performance, selflessness, and professionalism, we proudly present this challenge coin to commemorate your efforts. Congratulations on a job well done.
Thank you very, very much. I'm completely ambushed and surprised by this. I want to just say we have the finest clinicians out there in the county, no doubt. They make my job easy. I said last year of all the offices I miss the back of the ambulance the most, and this job lets me live vicariously through our clinicians and helping them learn to do this job, how to deal with it, and how to improve what they do, and remind them that any clinical hiccup does not define them. What they do every day in between and around all those things is what define them. They make a huge difference, so thank you very much. This means a lot to me.
And that ends the operations report unless there's questions.
Any questions for Chief Mitchell? Thank you so much. Moving on, I'm told we have no admin report, no support services report. So we'll move on to Captain Scholar, Local 522. Welcome.
Good evening, Board of Directors, Chief House, Executive Staff, members of the public. I'm mixed with emotions this evening after many of the reports given, some good and some frustrating, to be quite honest with you. So before I get into that, I would ask Director Wood if we could take a moment of silence for Fire Marshal Lucas Shepard, who passed away, El Dorado County Fire. I would like to acknowledge the support from this organization and everything they've done to participate in the procession and everything. And when we take that moment of silence to not only keep in mind him, but his wife Tanya, Calvin, Caleb, and Jackson, his 3 boys. They did live 4 houses down from us, and I really look forward to that relationship. So I would ask for that.
It's on my list, of course.
Thank you. I think what I heard this evening is a misunderstanding of what labor feels is true collaboration. And I think the best way to look at what collaboration is in our eyes is to look at one of the very first presentations that we got to view this evening. And that comes directly from Human Resources and what we've done with workers' comp. That was absolutely defined by true collaboration. Labor was intimately involved from day one in the process. We were allowed to be part of the RFP. We didn't agree all the time, but that was true collaboration. And there has been a willingness for that since that inception. And you can see exactly what collaboration does for this organization, for the men and women, and for the public. Those numbers don't lie. They speak for themselves. I thank Danielle for all her effort. I thank Luann. I thank the friendships that have been established, the trust in HR, the work from Melissa, Angela, Candace, Leslie, Alicia, Michelle, every one of them. There has always been collaboration in there, and I thank all of them for that. But that's not what we're seeing in all areas of this organization. There's a misrepresentation that collaboration happens in labor management, and with all due respect, Chief, that's not the case. Collaboration cannot occur when management doesn't provide agenda items for labor management. It can't. I don't even think that labor management discussions should be at open public at a board meeting. Those aren't conversations where we have concrete decisions being made. Those are opportunities for us to collaborate on issues. Those are opportunities to talk about the things that were discussed this evening at a board meeting that, quite frankly, are the first time I'm hearing it. Labor doesn't want to be viewed as the person that drives a wedge in progress, but when it's the first time we're hearing information, of course we're going to raise red flags. Because what I see is a special district turning into a city. Instead of embracing the flexibility that we have as a special district that our counterparts regionally wish that they had, it seems like we're attempting to add more bureaucratic red tape to hinder progress of this organization. And it's extremely frustrating. I don't know how else to ask for better communication and collaboration, but general staff is not an opportunity for collaborations. There's a difference between being informed and being collaborated with. When we have true collaboration, we don't need the information provided to us because we're part of that process. Oftentimes, we find ourselves coming in a room and being informed of things, and that delays progress. We are much better when we collaborate. When $500 million was on the table with Measure O, that seemed to drive collaboration, rightfully so, and look where it got us, a success. But now in the operations, when we start looking at purchasing and things like that, and this is at no fault of any individual out here. I appreciate all the effort that Jeff and his team has put into this. Service delivery and those recommendations were a representation of collaboration. Like I've said multiple times, it does happen in silos. It isn't a holistic problem. There's folks that embrace it and there's folks that don't. But when we're looking at starting to make purchases for Measure O, do we expect to be involved in that? Absolutely, because we can provide a very unique perspective to those purchases. The last thing that we want to do is start pulling bonds, accruing interest, and then having labor stand in the way and saying, hold on, we need additional time to look at this to say, yes, we support it or not. And at the end of the day, I do understand there's decisions that will be made even when we say we're not in agreement. That's fine. I'm here to tell you that. That's fine. But at least we're being informed on it. And that's what I ask all of you for. Not to take Director Costa's steam away of what the board can do. That's what you can do, and that's what we're here to ask for. So I'll take any questions if there is any, but I'll end with that.
Thank you so much, Captain. Do we have any questions? Director Weber.
Do you have any specifics that you're looking at that you can inform us of?
I will inform you on specifics individually. Some of that I don't think, because I don't want to be hypocritical either, but there are some specifics out of labor management and items like that where there was misrepresentations that I am more than happy to sit down with each of you individually and go over those.
Any other comments, questions for the Cap? No? Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to committee and delegate reports. The executive committee has not met and has nothing on the calendar at this point. Comm Center JPA, Deputy Chief Fiorica.
Good evening, President Wood, members of the board, Chief House, colleagues, and guests. Joe Furica, Interim Deputy Chief of Administration. The Communications Center JPA board met 2 days ago on the 25th in these chambers. And one of the highlights of that meeting was the fact that recently the Comm Center has acquired a building on the same parcel where they're at and have moved their administrative offices into that. And with that move, they now have room to be able to hold their board meetings in their own facility. So with that being said, the board meeting that occurred here 2 days ago will be the last one held in these chambers. And so on behalf of the board, they just wanted me to express their thanks to having the ability to use this facility for the last several years to conduct their board meetings. Other than that, there was no other reportable action, and the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, April 8th at 9 o'clock in their new annex.
Outstanding. Thank you. Any comments, questions? Thank you so much. Finance and Audit Committee, Director Jones.
Yes, thank you. We had no meeting tonight, and our next meeting is scheduled for April 24th, 5:30 in these chambers.
Thank you so much. Policy Committee, Director Costa.
Thank you. No report. Our next meeting is April 10th.
Thank you very much. Moving on to board member questions and comments. Start with Director Sailors. Director Jones.
Yes, thank you. A quick thank you to Metro Fire and staff who assisted in hosting the CalAFCO retreat in these chambers last week. We had electeds and staff from up and down the state of California. Everyone was extremely complimentary to Metro Fire and staff who helped make that retreat a success. Thank you.
Director Rice.
Thank you, Director Wood. Really one request. Chief, does the district have a policy on the use of law enforcement body cameras or the use of body cameras within the fire district?
I don't believe we do.
Okay. Is the district requesting body camera footage to be used in disciplinary actions?
I don't believe we have a policy on it, so it's not in disciplinary actions.
Okay. What I would like to ask the policy committee for is it is a problem. It's good to hear that it's not a problem here, because it's a problem everywhere, and it's a problem within the city of Sacramento. And we need to develop a policy on that, not just law enforcement body cameras, but also ring cameras at doors. We're really starting to see across the state some really serious issues. I feel very strongly on the use of body cameras, especially when we have law enforcement partners on scene of an EMS incident and they're not part of the incident and patient care is taped and those tapes are used during a disciplinary process. And if we request body camera footage, and if we have, of an incident, and we're looking at it to review employees, any employee, the employees have an absolute right to know that in that case, they're under surveillance. And this is a growing issue, and I don't want to find out that we've used this anywhere, and I hope that if we have, it's immediately discarded and not used until we have a policy for it. And every employee of Metro Fire needs to know what that is. It's coming, it's dangerous, it doesn't tell the whole story. And they've had firefighters in Colorado over a ketamine issue and a death jailed in state prison. And we're behind the 8 ball, so I would appreciate and request, and I will lend any kind of support and presence that I can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Director Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just really quickly, tonight we heard some pretty significant passion about our law enforcement brothers and sisters. As we end this evening with a moment of silence, I'd also like to ask us to include Osmar Rodardi from Marysville, who was gunned down yesterday. In addition to that, I would just beg our men and women to exercise with the most keen
intelligence you can, scene safety, until all this other stuff gets worked out. Please think about your crews first. Not much we can do to change the reality of the community, but we certainly can make sure that our men and women do not increase the risk that they already inherently have in this job. Please do that until we figure out as politicians how to make this right again, okay? So that's my ask, Mr. Chair, is that we also, think about the family that lost their law enforcement son, brother, husband. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Stark? No? Director Clark?
Yes, I'd just like to thank everyone for the discussions and the presentations that we had tonight. Very informative. It was excellent. Thank you.
Director Weber?
I have no comments.
Director Costa?
Thank you. I would like to also thank everyone for the presentations tonight. A lot of great information, and I think, as a board, we can't make well-informed decisions without that information. We also can't make well-informed decisions without the public input. So I'd encourage the public and everyone in this room to continue to provide that input. That's the only way we get better and move forward. And in that vein, I'd like to thank Station 51 who hosted me. For a great conversation, a lot of great feedback, and a lot of the topics we discussed today were topics that they brought up. So I think it's near and dear to the men and women out there serving in the community that these issues are real and that this board takes those issues seriously. So thank you for everyone for bringing it up and bringing the passion behind it. And with that, I just want to say congratulations to Metro Medic Academy graduation, 24-1. It was a great event. You guys did a great job, and it was great to see all those men and women there. So thank you.
Thank you, Director. I'll echo the same comment. I got the chance to go to the Metro Medic graduation 25-1. It was an excellent presentation, so thank you, Chief, for all the work that went into that. 2 weeks ago, El Dorado County lost Lucas Shepard suddenly and unexpectedly, and by all accounts, he was an absolutely outstanding firefighter, captain, and ultimately a division chief. I got the pleasure of working with him, directly with him, for the last 2.5 years in my day job, and we've all lost just a hell of a human being. So with that, we'll take a moment for Officer Rodarte and for Chief Shepard. Thank you.
Do we need to adjourn this to a closed session?
Sorry.
Recording stopped.